Larry, the summer is over. You're the mayor of Shark City. These people think you want the beaches open.
I was acting in the town's best interest.
That's right. You were acting in the town's best interest, and that's why you're going to do the right thing. That's why you're going to sign this, and we're going to pay that guy what he wants.
Martin. My kids were on that beach too.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing our exploration of the incredible film celebrating its 50th anniversary, Steven Spielberg's Jaws. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, and host, and voiceover artist here in San Diego, California. And of course, Steve, we're still on Amity Island. We haven't even gotten on the boat yet in the first two parts of our exploration of Jaws, and that speaks volumes to how special this movie has become for both of us and for a lot of our fans who've been really enjoying the first two episodes. Steve, there is so much that we are discovering as we talk about this film, and we were talking before we started this podcast that this might be our first ever five-parter, but who knows right now? It's looking the way it's going. It's looking like at least a four-parter, and I'm excited to jump into it all with you again.
Well, I'm certain it's going to be a four-parter because I'm damn sure we're not going to get to the end of this movie today. And the thing is like, in a weird way, I feel like this is what the Cine-Files is about, is that we are going to go into every detail. Yes. We will spare no expense, to quote Jurassic Park. We're not going to leave anything out. And we've already gotten a nice response from people, including the folks on Patreon who've contributed some of their questions, which you'll hear more of today. And we couldn't make the Cine-Files without our supporters on Patreon and as well as Apple Podcasts. And if you do sign up there, you can get ad-free versions of the show, access to our shorts, and even more tiers on Patreon, including our incredible advisory board.
And another way you all can support the show is when you hear these sponsors of our show during the commercial breaks. If you like the products and services that they're offering, you want to try them out, using our code is a great way to show support for the show, because then they'll keep sponsoring our show and you'll get something you want to try at a very deep discount. So remember to use our code when you hear it and when you hear these clients. And shout out to Washington Red Raspberries, True Diagnostic. They've all just been fantastic for us, and Hims as well, supporting us here on the channel. So make sure you patronize them in a show of support for the show and also for their great products.
So I made a bold statement, John, at the beginning of our first episode on Jaws, saying that I think there's an argument to be made that Steven Spielberg is the greatest film director in the history of the medium. Mm-hmm. And I've been thinking about it, and I know it's a bold statement, and I'm sure all sorts of people could bring up other people. But here's another argument I came up with, which is, let's say someone had some kind of a show where they ranked things, like maybe put together a top 10 or something. And let's say that they had to figure out like the top 10 science fiction movies of all time. Wow. Or they had to figure out the top 10 action movies of all time.
That's a great idea.
Or they had to figure out the top 10 horror movies, or the top 10 opening sequences, or the top 10 scariest moments or most moving moments in a film. I think we could do list after list after list, and there's a damn good shot that a Steven Spielberg movie or moment would be in that list almost every single time.
Yeah, I think there is actually. It's actually a really good point you bring up, because I was rewatching the last hour and 15 minutes of the movie again this morning because it's just such a good movie. And I was thinking to myself, like, Jaws, I think, is his greatest film, and Schindler's List is his most important film. And there you have to make the delineation. And then you start to go down his resume and you go, there are probably millions of people who have E.T. in their top 10. Or their personal top 10s, right? And millions of people who have Raiders in their top 10. Millions of people have Jaws in their top 10. But there's probably millions of people who have Schindler's List who really are deep cinephiles.
Or Saving Private Ryan.
Or Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, there's so many you can go through that would qualify for a top 10 list for anybody, really. And although I may not agree that he is the greatest film director ever, because that's still Akira Kurosawa for me, I think that there's definitely a case to be made and a conversation to be had about the fact that he may cross over so many different lists because of his films being able to cross over in so many 4-quadrant ways for so many people. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing to consider and look at when you take Spielberg's resume as a whole. You know,
That's what keeps striking me is there's just nobody like him.
Yeah.
Is that because we couldn't, if we were sitting there and just having a conversation about the most exciting openings to a movie, we would have to talk about Jaws. We'd talk about Raiders.
Yeah.
We might talk about even Jurassic Park. Like there's so many things. There's like, you know, we're going to get to it when we eventually get to the end of this film, but the construction of the action climax. Spielberg defines that multiple times in movies.
Yeah.
But and this is what I mean. There's just nobody like him because there's nobody who does all that and has Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan and films like The Post or films like, you know, there's so many movies that are different.
Right.
That he's still making great films that move people.
I think the one place where he has never conquered it is comedy. I think
Right.
when you look at Billy Wilder, this is a guy who was able to do dramas and comedies effectively, but there's no real big action movie on Billy Wilder's resume, you know, because it wasn't a film. There wasn't films that people did back then. But if he was alive today, I think Billy would be the other director you could consider in the same ballpark with Steven Spielberg in terms of the variety and the success in the variety that they've had. So yeah, that's the one Achilles for Spielberg is comedy. The one Achilles for Billy Wilder is action. It doesn't mean that they can't shoot action because there's fun chase scenes in Some Like It Hot and there's fun comedy scenes in certain aspects of Spielberg's movies. But overall, those are the one areas that they find. But like they're so successful in all the areas that they exist in that you have to consider them, and especially Spielberg as we're talking about it, the greatest, or if not the greatest, one of the greatest to ever do it.
I think you made a perfect point because it is 100% true. The one time Spielberg tried to make a straight up comedy,
yes,
which is 1941, he fails.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I think it's really important. Most of his movies have very funny moments. We already talked about It's Only an Island if you look at it from the water. I mean, that's one of the funniest things ever. But that's different from making a straight up comedy. Yeah. Spielberg can totally get a funny moment in an adventure movie or a drama or something like that, but he's never shown that he can do a straight up comedy.
Right. Even The Terminal, which is as close to a comedy he's gotten since 1941, isn't quite 100% there. Right. A great film. So yeah.
So I just wanted to get that out. And now let's return to Amity Island, where we've just discovered the head in a terrifying manner of Ben Gardner as it popped out of the boat at us. And where we are now, we're standing on a bluff with the mayor, and we are trying to convince him that there's a real threat here.
This is a great white, Larry, a big one. And any shark expert in the world will tell you it's a killer, it's a man-eater.
Look, the situation is that apparently a great white shark has staked a claim in the waters off Amity Island. And he is going to continue to feed here as long as there is food in the water.
Murray Hamilton's skeptical look.
Yeah.
Looking at Hooper is so great. You can see from the first second that there is no way he's going to listen to these guys.
No, yeah. And it's pretty clear that he has, I think it's great to watch this film in 2025 because you can't deny how we're more of a politically aware country. No matter what side of the fence you are, I'm not choosing sides right now in the conversation. It's more a matter of you can look at it a certain way, right? The people in power looking at a scientist and at a new chief of police, and he is just scoffing at this kind of stuff because I know what's best, I know what's right, and he doesn't want to listen to science. He doesn't want to listen to this guy trying to do the right thing and save people. He's more focused on other things, right? And so the skepticism, as you said, is a healthy part of who he is because he has a job to protect the money from the town. It's very similar to Roger Goodell in the NFL. He is the commissioner of the NFL, and he's supposed to be the commissioner of the entire NFL, but he works for the owners. And sometimes players' health, sometimes players' mental health and CTE and their brain health, their body health, all of that sometimes is the price that the NFL is willing to pay so these owners can keep making money. And so Roger Goodell at times is like the mayor in this town, where he's allowing these people to die because he is essentially propped up by the business leaders of the town, just like the owners prop up Roger Goodell in the NFL. So you have that comparison here. So nothing either of them was going to say was going to get through to him because you said he had his mind already made up.
I mean, there's so many things. I mean, this is what, and I will, trust me, John, I'm going to have a lot more to say to this on this topic, going on. But like this idea of how we manage risk is just such a fundamental thing because all the time we're making decisions about, we'll let that happen, but we won't let that happen. And they are not rational. They're not based on like, this thing over here is going to cost 1,000 lives and this thing's going to cost 10 lives, we're obviously 100 times more likely to deal with the 1,000 life thing. Yeah. That is not how we operate at all.
No.
It's not even close.
Tell them about the swimmers.
A shark is attracted to the exact kind of splashing and activity that occurs whenever human beings go in swimming. You cannot avoid it.
So I'm going to just say this is kind of true and kind of not true.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to chime in and give us the truth on this.
Okay, so here's the deal. Okay. If you are walking down a quiet street and someone makes a whole bunch of noise to your left and nobody makes any noise on your right, which way will you turn?
To the left.
So is it true that sharks notice when people are splashing it? Yes, it is. They will notice. Does it mean that is like the dinner bell for them? No. There's all sorts of things that happen. They notice those things happening, but no, it's not that they go, ooh, splashing. That is what I want to must kill. That's not what happens.
Well, like you said in the last episode, sharks swim close to us all the time.
All the time.
We just are not aware of it. And they may be attracted to the splashing around, but as you said, it doesn't mean dinner served.
Right.
Exactly. If you open the beaches on the 4th of July, it's like ringing the dinner bell, for Christ's sake.
Look, Mr. Vaughn, I pulled a tooth the size of a shot glass out of the wrecked hull of a boat out there, and it was the tooth of a great white.
It was Ben Gardner's boat. It was all chewed up. I helped tow it in. You should have seen him.
Where is that tooth? Did you see it, Brody?
No, I didn't see it. He dropped it.
I had an accident.
Way in.
This is perfect, right? Where is that tooth? And I think he knows this, or else he wouldn't have asked. I think he knows they don't have the tooth, and because it's such a perfect counter to what he's saying, and he's so confident. He's like, "Where's that tooth? Do you have it? Did you see it, Brody?" He knows the answer, and I think he knows somehow that he didn't get the tooth, so he's got his opening to go after Hooper's credibility and his issues. And I love the fact that he's wearing a suit with frickin' anchors on it, like anchors on his suit. It's so his blazer is perfect.
This is a behavior that just bugs the crap out of me. And I see it everywhere all the time, which is people are frequently looking to win the argument.
Yes.
And they're not frequently looking to find the truth or to understand the reality or do the right thing. The tooth is neither here nor fucking there. There's literally a head of Ben Gardner. Yeah. He was clearly killed by the shark. There's no other explanation for what the fuck does the tooth matter? Right. But the fact that he claims there was a tooth but cannot produce the tooth is a way of weakening the appearance of Hooper's argument. It doesn't weaken the argument at all.
Right. It's just about winning the argument. You're so right, Steven. That's why he uses that opportunity. And as I said, I think him knowing it is his way of undercutting Hooper's credibility and pushing this thing even further out. And this is where he launches into the reasons for why he's doing what he's doing.
Look, we depend on the summer people here for our very lives.
You are not going to have a summer unless you deal with this problem.
We're not only going to have to close the beach, we're going to have to hire somebody to kill the shark. I mean, we're going to have to tell the Coast Guard.
Mr. Vaughn, you have to contact.
And now they just go off. Everyone's arguing over each other. And we hear in the midst of this.
One of you are familiar with our problems.
I think that I am familiar with the fact that you are going to ignore this particular problem until it swims up and bites you on the ass.
I have to believe this is Wes Anderson stealing this stuff for his movies where people just yell at each other and talk over each other with this kind of stuff. But I think this is a fascinating window into these characters, right? Because the mayor is walking forward as Hooper is backing up. And I know it's done so that we're heading to the billboard. It's done filmically so we head to the billboard. But it's also a way of it's also something they teach you in customer service back when I used to work in customer service. Always move the person who is upset away from the position that they're in. If they come at you at the end of the desk, walk them over to the middle of the desk. It conveys power. It conveys that you know what you're doing. They subconsciously believe that you have something that they need, so they follow you. So it kind of makes them go in a little bit of a not submissive position, but a little bit of a weaker position so that you can retake control of the situation, the back and forth, and you're still going to solve the problem the best you can with what you're allowed to do. But it's that way of taking someone off a stance that they're making. Once you move them off and have them moving around, they're not strong, and that subconsciously affects the strength of their position. Now, not everyone falls for it, but it does show power. And so having him back Hooper up the way he is, confidently, it shows that he is, in his mind, winning this back and forth, and these guys are not going to convince him. And he's walking into position to make a point to Brody, and the point is so useless, so ridiculous, such a nonsense point that it's insulting that he is essentially denigrating the death of these two people because of some and valuing the graffiti over the death of these two people. It's mind blowing, really.
This is so great because what I never thought about the fact of repositioning the person as a power move. I didn't think about that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so we started with the rhetorical move of poking a hole in Hooper's argument because he dropped the tooth, right?
Yes.
Now Hooper makes the rhetorical move of taking him off his position in order to weaken him.
Yes.
And now the mayor is going to make yet another rhetorical move, which you just brought up, which is where he goes next, which is, I don't want to talk to you about the shark thing. You're a shark expert. I actually don't have any good arguments against that.
Right.
And so I changed the topic.
Yep.
Sick vandalism. That is a deliberate mutilation of a public service message.
And I love the way it's painted on the billboard. It's the perfect amateur job. You know what I mean?
Probably those two kids who we're going to see later.
Now, I want those little paint-happy bastards caught and hung up by their Buster Browns.
Richard Dreyfuss's reaction to this is gold.
Yeah, he just starts laughing at the whole thing, and he says, that's it, goodbye.
I'm not going to waste my time arguing with a man who's lining up to be a hot lunch. I'm going to see you later.
This is great theatrical blocking. Like, this is almost like a play. Most times in movies, you don't have three characters moving around a scene constantly. It doesn't happen. You usually cut, right? And this is a young filmmaker in Spielberg when he's making this movie. And the way he's positioning the camera, initially the camera is placed in their eye level, right? They're level to us as we're standing. But as they move forward, the camera starts to lower and lower and lower so that you're watching them go in and out of frame in such interesting ways. And it increases the power of the mayor and it decreases the power of Hooper as he becomes smaller and smaller. And as Brody is moved to the frame more and more to the right, it decreases his power and presence on screen as well. So it's really smart and deft how they use the camera here to convey the switching power in the back and forth. Because initially, it looks like Brody and Hooper are going to convince the mayor there with their passion and their excitement, but the mayor rides it all out, moves them off their perch, and then as the camera lowers, he is in a stronger position as he walks off because he's basically beaten both of their defenses and walked to his car. You know,
it's so great, and this is what I'm talking about. And if you want, I mean, obviously, those of you who are listening to this podcast are into all the details of how movies are made. Watch this movie again and just pay attention to where the shot starts and where it ends up.
Yes.
Over and over and over again, too many times for us to comment on. Spielberg is doing this thing where the shot starts off as one thing and then someone moves and it becomes someone else and then it turns and it's a two shot and now it's a close up and now it's just happening all the time.
Fantastically well choreographed moves. It's so smart.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine. It's really a miracle of evolution. All this machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks. And that's all.
So he's trying one last attempt. Like, I'm going to calmly tell you what the situation is. Maybe, I've got emotional. I'm just going to try to get you to get it. And I feel like he's probably talking to his dad. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
There's an element of that.
Well, we've all had this conversation where we believe we have the perfect argument. Our facts are all in a line.
Yeah.
We go up to a person to present this unassailable argument, and we present it and nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And it gets harder and harder to convince people that believe in that narrative.
Nothing. And what he says, and this is, again, the placement of the camera. What he says is...
Love to prove that, wouldn't you? Get your name into the National Geographic.
And then he walks off camera. He's won the scene. He has won the scene. He leaves Hooper dumbfounded, and he leaves Brody utterly frustrated. And Hooper is so dumbfounded that he just resorts to laughing because what else can you do in this moment in his mind? Because exhausted all the logic you could possibly use, and this person will just not listen to logic. And certainly we have had conversations in our own lives with people like this that we just can't seem to get them to understand our point of view or our place that we're coming from, or even the truth of a situation. And it's just so fascinating because he completely undercuts Hooper by saying, "Oh, you'd love to prove that, wouldn't you? I'd get your name in National Geographic." And listen, he's not 100% wrong. And I think that's what's also an interesting element of the movie.
So I have a lot to say, John.
Yes, please.
So this is the first thing. The first thing I want to point out is that all of us have been the person, I promise you, we have all been the person where someone else had a perfectly logical argument that they brought to us 100%. And we couldn't hear it. And you and I have had many conversations of where we heard something 5 years later,
Yes.
And when, I believe this 10 years ago, but now I find it takes a long time. It's really hard to overcome that. So it isn't just, and this is so important to me, it's not just that the other people are stupid. That's sometimes they are,
I've said
but
that,
sometimes we're stupid too. That's the first thing. Second thing, this National Geographic thing. We see this all the time.
Yeah,
which is that someone wants to attack because it's like you drop the tooth thing. It does not actually have anything to do with the arguments being made.
Yeah.
What it's doing is it's attacking the representative of the argument.
Yes.
And this happens all the time where someone will point out that someone else is self-interested in one way or another, that they're doing this to make money, they're doing it to get publicity, they're doing it to distract, they're doing whatever it is. Pointing out an ulterior motive is totally valid, but it actually doesn't affect the underlying argument.
Right. But it does muddy the waters, and that's
100%.
kind of what here. But I actually think, and again, I don't think Murray is wrong fully, because later I think the reason things happen on the boat is because Hooper is too obsessed with wanting to document what's going on with the shark for his own personal interests. And the reason he even showed up here in Amity is for his own personal gain. It isn't because he wants to save citizens from this shark. And so there's a difference in the approach. So, and I think that I love the ending here where he walks out, and I love Hooper just kind of being dumbfounded at all, because I think secretly he knows he's not wrong, but it frustrates him in that moment. So, yeah.
So I want to go back to this line of, this is a miracle of evolution, an eating machine.
Oh, yes.
All this machine does is swim and eat and make little sharks.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, this is not true.
What?
This is hugely not true. What's so misleading about it, it's a great line. It is a fantastically written line. It's a fantastically acted line. And it is supported by every single thing we've seen in this movie.
Yes.
It's reinforced by how the shark has behaved. It's reinforced by the music, by the shot selection, by all this stuff.
Yes.
That feels like, this is an eating machine. That's what this thing is. And so it rings really, really true.
Yes.
The problem with the statement is that, first of all, it's like if you were to describe a tuna, what would you say that it does?
Eat, poop,
and swim,
and make other tuna, and swim
and make other tuna.
Yeah.
That's not. It's like because what it doesn't do is say what other. And sharks do all sorts of stuff. Sharks are curious. Sharks have different personalities. They're aggressive sharks. They're timid sharks. They're sharks that like to be near large groups. There's sharks that are loners. There's all sorts of posturing things you see, like with dogs, where dogs like have dominance and they have postures and they puff their gills to scare other sharks. I mean, sharks do all sorts of stuff. Wow. Sharks have parasites living all over their skin that itch, so they go and scrape parasites off of things when they find a nice scrapey thing to find. I mean, it's a ridiculous statement, and it's not true. That's the first piece of it. The second piece of it, it's totally not true of naturalists. If you talk to any scientist studying any animal, and you said, I hear you're studying earthworms or grubs or something, they would talk to you for 7 hours about how fascinating those animals are. No shark scientist would ever reduce sharks. They would go, sharks are amazing and awesome and complicated. They wouldn't say this.
No.
But again, it's a great line.
Yes.
And I think it's this line that solidifies what Spielberg is doing in this movie. And it's part of why we have this huge fear of sharks, this totally disproportionate fear, is because that line reflects the movie that we've been seeing,
Oh, yeah, that's a great point.
And I think, and so this you're talking about, like, how do we get to the place where you can't convince someone even when you have all the facts? That's what we've been just talking about.
Yeah.
I have a lot of facts about how sharks are totally not a threat. And yet I will not convince everyone to not be scared of sharks, because Spielberg has done such an amazing job of creating this narrative. Yeah. And you know what that line reminds me of? It's an eating machine. It just swims and eats and makes little sharks.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Terminator line.
Listen and understand that Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
It's the same line in a way.
Yep. That's a great point.
It is the unstoppable, unknowable, unnegotiable evil
which is why Duel,
Yes.
as we had said in the first part, was like a dry run for what he was going to do in this movie, because it is the same thing. Duel is this unknowable truck that is hunting down Dennis Weaver through the whole movie. And I love that in movies. And I always get...
It works.
Yeah, it works. And I always get frustrated when people want to explain away evil. Like, the original Halloween movie, Michael Myers was just evil, period. There is no explanation. There is no reason for it. He just is. And when the new Halloween movie with Rob Zombie, what he did, I thought was ridiculous, because his mother didn't hug him long enough. F that. Sometimes there are things that are better when they're unexplainable, because they attract us and our sense of mystery and intrigue. There's a reason why people love true crime documentaries, and Dateline and all these shows are massive hits, and multiple versions of them on multiple channels, is because people they are attracted to mystery and they want to solve it. Once you solve it, the mystery is no longer incredible and unique and fascinating. So the idea of, I think in the 1970s, when this film comes out, Steve, sharks are a mystery to the audience. And for a majority of people, when they watch Jaws for the first time, they are not as learned on sharks. Although, of course, maybe lately over the last 15 years with Shark Week, people are much more knowledgeable before they watch Jaws for the first time. But for decades, people weren't. And so it added the mystery of it all. If you start explaining it all away, you're going to lose the power of it. So yeah, it's a great point.
It's interesting, because I think it's two things that sound contradictory but aren't, because you're totally right. It's that mysterious thing that draws us in.
Yeah.
It's also an extremely simple thing, which is Michael Myers is evil and wants to kill people.
Yes.
I don't have to know why he's evil. And that kind of a narrative, the really simple narrative, the Terminator is going to keep going until it kills you. That is really compelling. Humans are really drawn into that kind of dichotomy. There's something, it's a simple, highly emotional narrative with very strong good and evil and sides. My guess is there is literally nobody listening to this podcast right now who has been bitten by a shark.
Hope
there's probably nobody listening to this podcast now who knows anyone who's bitten by a shark, who's been around a shark bite, who's witnessed a shark bite. It is totally not part of our world. But the fear, because of this narrative, partially created by this movie, super high.
Yeah.
On the other hand, everybody listening to this probably knows someone who had a heart attack. They probably know someone who had cancer. They probably know they probably witnessed a fatal car accident or driven by the aftermath of one.
Oh, yeah.
They know people who have died in car accidents. They know people probably who've been victims of gun violence.
Yep.
Even though those things affect us, all of us, way more than sharks.
Yeah.
And this is this thing that just fascinated me when I was working on those shark documentaries, was the mismatch between the actual threat of sharks and the tremendous fear of sharks. And we already talked about one of the ways that they got there, which is there's Brody is looking at that shark book that is literally filled cover to cover with pictures of shark bites. And you go like, well, a more honest and realistic book would be to publish a book with 1 billion happy swimmers and one dude that got bit by a shark.
Yeah, except that book wouldn't sell.
Well,
and there'd be multiple copies in the library that no one is checking out.
Exactly. Well, and this is the problem, because essentially the publisher has a fiduciary responsibility to sell books that make money. And we love narratives about violent good and evil and innocent victims. And that's very compelling. And so it creates this crazy feedback loop, which is that this is the narrative we like that isn't really true. And so they keep selling us this narrative, which makes that narrative even more indelibly written into our systems.
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy that we all live with, isn't it, Steve? Like, we all have those moments where we separate the art from the artist. And the reason I say that, to connect it back to this thing you're saying, is we all have that news story that's presented to us in a certain way that we think is terrible, the way it was presented in terms of the sensational and the shock factor of it all, yet we're going to totally read it. Yet we're going to watch the video about it. Yet we might even secretly buy the book or rent the book out or borrow the book from a friend so that you can read up on it. So you may be upset about it, but you're still going to indulge in it. And in a way, either financially or energy wise, you're feeding into that narrative still existing so that it happens again later on down the road. So yeah, it's a great point you bring up, because we complain about stuff, but then we indulge in that stuff anyway. And then the indulging is what causes it to happen again down the road.
There's a great quote from Jonathan Swift, which is, "You can't reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into." This is all of us all the time.
Yeah.
we believe a certain thing about the world because it emotionally resonates with us. And then the world feeds us back that worldview over and over again. So people are always going like, why are politics so polarized today? I think this Jaws, this whole thing is a big part of why. Because on some level, we love these stories. Like we love Jaws. The dramatic stories that we love. And I got to tell you, man, this is the moment I worked on these shark documentaries on and off for like 8 years, a lot of time. And I totally remember this moment where I was sitting there going, wait a minute. If someone could take, mildly misleading statistics along with this narrative of good and evil and terrify us about something that is no threat to us at all, what would happen if someone used these techniques on things that are a threat to us, on things that are serious, on things that really do matter, which sharks don't? And I'm telling you, man, the moment I had this thought, it was like the red pill in the Matrix. Or no, it was like someone handing me those glasses in They Live. Because the moment that I had the thought of what happens if you use these techniques on serious issues, that was all I could see. I looked around and I was like, oh, we're being bombarded from every direction with existential threats, stories about good and evil, stories about innocent victims, stories about mindless hordes that are coming to get us. And I'm just saying this is not like a left-right thing. I'm not trying to make a political point. I'm trying to make this is being done to us all the time. Just this morning, there was a horrible, tragic event that I'm not going to go into, but within an hour of the event, there were 2 narratives that came out that were the same kind of thing. There is, good and evil and people marching towards destroying you and only one possible defense. And it sounds just like that speech in The Terminator or the speech about the mindless eating machines.
Right. But this has been going on since the dawn of time,
True, totally.
Right? Like I think about always, because I love to watch old documentaries. And I don't mean old just in terms of when they were made, but old in terms of the time period that they focus on. So like you go, like when I was watching that Roosevelt's documentary from Ken Burns, I had no idea how much the country was calling FDR Hitler while he was in office.
Oh, yeah.
They were comparing him to Hitler. We remember recently during the Obama presidency, they put a Hitler mustache on Obama, the Tea Party did, on some of their paraphernalia. And even now, as we said, the left is calling Trump essentially Hitler. And so you have, that is the end point always on all of this. And then I watched an American Experience series on the Gilded Age and some of this press that was being put out there about JP Morgan and about the people who were the business leaders. They were coming to destroy all the workers. They were going to turn you into indentured slaves and pay you nothing and have you living in their shacks. Now, there's always an element of truth. How much truth is where you start to get a little bit more of the fuzziness when it comes to this stuff. But I think as human beings, we are 2 people. We are people who complain about being manipulated, yet we allow ourselves to be manipulated a lot of the time. And I think this has probably been going on since the caveman days. Like, I'm sure there was cavemen who were like trying to keep the tribe going in a certain direction. So they fabricated that there were more leopards or saber-toothed tigers or whatever in that other direction so that people went this direction because the people who wanted to go in that direction had ulterior motives that benefited them. I'm sure this has always been going on. I'm sure it's happened in Egypt. I'm sure it happened in Rome. I'm sure it happened everywhere. So we're just human beings that, unfortunately, whatever means of media, people have misused it, abused it, and used it to manipulate us to believe certain things. And it's up to us to take responsibility for that and search for more fleshed out answers and more perspective on these topics,
Well, I totally agree, but I think the big difference is that when Gruck wanted to convince the fellow members of the cave to go down the hill, everybody knew that the saber-toothed tigers were down the hill and Gruck was an idiot. Like, the problem with today is we're literally living in this algorithmic social media world.
Wait a minute. You think everybody knew Gruck? That's you putting that narrative. Now you're manipulating the narrative by saying that Gruck was an idiot. You have no idea if Gruck was an idiot.
Here's what I'm going to say. Right. I am not going to get down into the weeds with you about Gruck. But what I will say is that the difference is that the world that the cavemen lived in was a few miles around and 30 or 40 people. And so how much to know what was down that hill, a lot of them knew. And again, I'm not going into the weeds about cavemen. Because what I really want to say is today that we live in an algorithmic world where we are being fed specific things that are totally different from our neighbor right next door to us. And so that's makes that amplified. That same feedback loop that happens with the shark book, it is magnified 10,000 times by social media.
Yeah, you and I just see this differently because I think it's just I think it's all the same, and it's just exponentially expanded to match the size of our world. When we were cavemen, you're right. It was like a 5-mile stretch, and there was only 30 of us. But those 30 essentially are the 240 billion or whatever there is on the planet, because for them, that was their world. So any kind of narrative that is pushed out there is just as massive of an effect on the whole tribe as narratives that are being pushed out now, because we're a much more global society. So these narratives now are a little more accessible to us than they were, say, in the 60s, 50s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s.
That's
even.
totally true.
Nowadays, you're right in that way, Steve, that these narratives do manipulate us on a larger scale, but they also match the fact that we are a much more larger scale society. So to me, it's all correlative, but quantifying, but quantity, you're absolutely right. But I also think it's just correlative. So it's all the same. And we've always been prey to this stuff, so to speak.
Here's where I would disagree slightly is that we were very much in a local news world. So like 67, just going back 50 years or 70 years, like 60-70% of the news you got was what was going on in your community. And if there was a murder in your community, you would hear about it. But if there was a murder 6 cities over, you wouldn't hear about it, because that was part of national news, and that's shifted. And so what happens now is, rather than finding out what happens in your community, they look around, where was the most heinous murder in the United States? Right. And that's all we hear about. And we hear about one of those every day. So when you ask people about what's the crime rate like, they go, it's way up, even though in fact it's way down. And it's just like the things we talked about with the shark, because we're only hearing about all the worst crimes that happen all over the country.
Yeah, I think you're right when it comes to sharks, right? Because there's not a lot of documentaries that people are interested to watch that show us the migration patterns of sharks and the playfulness of sharks and the fun of sharks and all. There's not enough counter programming, I guess, for lack of a better term, to balance out the scales with the sharks. So yeah, I think when it comes to that topic, when it comes to Jaws, when it comes to sharks, when it comes to that kind of thing, I think you're absolutely right. We've been manipulated to believe a certain thing about sharks, and to be honest with us, with human beings, because I'm in this place now where enough blaming of the media, enough blame. Like, human beings have to take responsibility for their own information, and so the fact that we are gravitating to more of the documentaries that show us the ferocity of sharks instead of gravitating to more of the documentaries that show us the nature stuff about sharks, like what we'd see about lions or monkeys or tigers there on Nature on PBS or on the Richard Attenborough series. We don't usually get that with sharks, and people don't seem to patronize those kinds of stuff in the same numbers, unfortunately. They have to feed the beast. It's a supply and demand society, unfortunately.
It's exactly right. And I'll say one more thing, and then I promise I'm done with my rant, and we'll retire, but we'll live again to rant another day.
Yes.
And that is just that the thing that really bothers me about these narratives is not that they're not sometimes true, because some of them I agree with. I do see existential threats to our society coming. My problems with these narratives is, one, they're not persuasive. So if you use your scary worldview on someone who believes the total opposite scary worldview, you're not going to convince them of anything. What they're good for is convincing people that already agree with you to believe more strongly. The second thing I don't like about them is they don't help us solve the problem, because these two competing worldviews, all these problems, immigration, crime, all these, they're really complicated, really complicated. And simple worldviews help prevent us from seeing the complexity, which means it makes it really hard to solve these problems in a real way.
Yeah, but I think it all comes down to us demanding that people solve the problem in a certain way. And until we rise up to demand that our political leaders and our leaders themselves solve the problem in ways that make sense for us as a public, it won't change, because these people, a lot of people who seek political office, seek power, they seek it for their own ends and their own ego stroke, and they don't really always seek it to help society. So it's up to us to get together and demand our leaders change and demand they deliver results in a certain way, or vote them out. That's our power as citizens of this country and citizens of the world. And I think sometimes we forget that.
I totally agree. But I think that one of the first steps to doing that is looking around and recognizing how they're trying to manipulate you. So look for these stories. Trust me, think about that Terminator speech, think about that Jaws speech when you get thrown a news story. And if you start to see similarities, you know what's going on.
Larry, if we make an effort today, we might be able to save August.
August? For Christ's sake, tomorrow's the 4th of July, and we will be open for business. It's going to be one of the best summers we've ever had.
Does he believe that?
Yes, I would say he does believe that in a obstinate, stubborn kind of way.
I think he's doing the classic politician thing of saying a thing out loud with enthusiasm to try to will it into existence.
Now, if you fellas are concerned about the beaches, you do whatever you have to make them safe. But those beaches will be open for this weekend.
Drives off once again, winning the scene. Him leaving the scene. He wins every time in these back and forth.
Yep. By the way, in the book, after Ellen sleeps with Hooper, and we have this scene, Brody wants to close the beaches. Hooper argues to keep the beaches open. He thinks the shark is probably gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they're totally on opposite sides. The main emotional conflict of the book is between Hooper and Brody. The music starts up. It's kind of is one of the cues that isn't really directly connected to the shark. It's kind of Sousa-esque, and we see the fairies coming in, and we see Hooper and Brody trying to prep and do anything they can to protect people as the beaches open. And we just see line after line of tourists marching forward. To me, it always feels kind of like lambs to the slaughter. That's how I feel watching this sequence.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which brings us a question from one of our patrons, Ander R. Machiavar Garcia, and I probably mispronounced that, and I'm going to mispronounce this name as well. He says that Slavoj Žižek, which is a philosopher, once said that Spielberg unknowingly used the shark as a metaphor for Nazis. Do you agree with the great philosopher, or is it intended as a more generalized metaphor, primal fear, anxiety?
Here's what I was saying. I can see how you can make that connection, because here are people trying to tell you what's going to happen, trying to tell someone in power, look, you need to stop this thing early before it grows, because the more it has access to the crowds, the more it is going to feed on the crowds and the fear of the crowd. So you can see how you can make that connection, and people aren't listening, and people are still willing to put themselves in danger. They're willing to show up at the beach. They're willing to, they have newspapers. People might not believe this, but there was news that was broadcast on the radios that everyone listened to, because there was only 4 or 5 stations back then, or 10 stations, I guess, if we could AM stuff. So you had access to news. So everybody here is going to show up in the beach. I don't think is blind to what's happening or blind to what happened. They just don't think it'll happen to them. And so they willingly put themselves in harm's way. And you could argue that there are people who were desperate for something, walked to a rally or showed up at a rally, even though maybe they'd heard some negative things about a person, and then were influenced by that person. And if you say that person is Hitler and you make the connection to Nazism, then yes, I think you can make an excellent case that the shark represents that. But it really represents any philosophy that seeks to destroy the members that adhere to it, and destroy anyone who doesn't,
I think that as a professional film podcaster, I am perfectly capable of watching this film and applying that metaphor. But to me, it's like anything where I could apply multiple metaphors for the same reason. Kind of, it's like I could say this is about communism, or I could say this is about crime, or I could say this, like any violent thing that's coming to get us, I could say it's about that. I don't think there's anything specific here that points out Nazis.
Yeah, I agree. And even to go the other political direction, you could argue that people could see the shark as immigrants coming into the country.
Sure.
In fact, if you have that political point of view. So yeah, it's basically anything that they feel endangers the multitude of people that are there.
Well, in fact, this is just not to belabor the points I've already belabored, but this is exactly how you create a narrative, which is that you go take one of those things you hate and you just compare it. It's like the shark in Jaws.
Yeah.
And now you've put an image in your head to associate with the immigrant or the policeman or the whoever that you want to turn into an evil thing,
100%.
But first of all, just again, the shots of this world feel like a documentary. It just feels so real to me, everything we're seeing. And the last thing we end with is at an arcade with a shark game that we see. Would you like to know why this is in the movie?
Sure.
Spielberg's having a rough time on this film. And every day he's worried about getting fired, and every day he's stressed out, and every day he feels like he's failing, and every day at the end of the day, the way he relaxed was to go to the local arcade and play video games. So he was by himself playing video, and the guy's 26.
Yeah.
You know, he's a 26-year-old kid playing video games after spending the whole day trying to direct this movie.
That would have been amazing. Spielberg at a young age playing video games at 26.
Every camera move, again, as we said, is really interesting. So one of them is there are all these boats out in the water because we have all these extra security looking for sharks. And we're tracking with a boat, and the boat drives by Richard Dreyfuss, and then the camera rests on Dreyfuss in a boat rather than continue with the boat. And a moment later, we have a shot where we're tracking with a helicopter, and then we follow the helicopter to the mayor, and the helicopter goes out of frame, and then we follow the mayor as he walks around.
Yeah.
And it's just what you pointed out before. It's all these shots that transform into other things. And if I were directing Jaws, I would have just cut to Matt Hooper on the boat, and I would have just cut to the mayor on the beach. And those things would have been totally fine. And you would have understood the story. And that is why I am not Steven Spielberg. You know?
Yeah. Also, we get a cameo from Peter Benchley, who's the reporter walking around. The guy who wrote the novel is the reporter walking around talking about the people who are there on the beaches.
Amity Island has long been known for its clean air, clear water, and beautiful white sand beaches. But in recent days, a cloud has appeared on the horizon of this beautiful resort community. A cloud in the shape of a killer shark.
The media sensationalizing, the media using a narrative or using a colorful metaphor to sensationalize the situation. Yeah.
Now you're talking my language.
Oh, hi, Larry. Why aren't you in the water?
I just put some suntan lotion on, and I'm trying to absorb some of this sun.
Nobody's going in.
Was he just putting suntan lotion in?
No,
was
of
he
course
scared?
not. He's doing everything possible not to go in the water. And I also think it's really shitty of the mayor to do this when later on the mayor says, "My kids were in the ocean too. Why didn't you go get your kids to go in the ocean first?
Why didn't you go in the fucking ocean?
Yeah, why don't you go in there,
Larry?
Murray? Yeah, or Larry, right? Larry, sorry. Why? And also these are 3 young children that you're essentially subjecting to this possibility, and they're going out there with the yellow raft exactly like the other kid had his yellow raft when he got attacked by the shark. So there's a lot of stupid ideas happening here for these 2 poor old people bringing out their children or grandchildren out into the water. But that's what sparks everybody goes in, because all you need is one person to go through, and then everyone goes, "Oh, it seems like it's safe. Let's all jump in."
Well, we don't want responsibility for our own decisions.
Right.
We want other people to make those decisions, and then we feel like, okay, they did it.
Yeah, it's safe. They did it. Then now I'm covered. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and speaking of which, some of the people that are trying to go in the water is Chief Brody's oldest son, and his friends on their boat.
Do me a favor, will you?
What?
You and the other guys take the boat and put it in the pond instead.
Pond's for old ladies.
I know it's for the old ladies, but just do it for the old man, huh?
Which later on we'll find out is that's what puts him in danger.
Yeah, ironically.
And we watch them as they carry the boat over to the pond, and we watch people laughing and swimming. And 2 things about this. One is I was just told that the sounds that people make splashing and swimming are exactly what attract a shark. So I'm looking at that. The other point, there is no music.
Yeah.
Because the shark isn't here yet.
Right.
And they're not going to cheat you. And so when we cut to that underwater shot of all the legs, we hear the subjective sound that we're underwater, but we don't hear music.
Exactly.
And we see all of the security and people with rifles and people with binoculars out on boats, and everybody's watching. More legs, more underwater, no music. The mayor is being interviewed. I love his interview.
I'm pleased and happy to repeat the news that we have in fact caught and killed a large predator that supposedly injured some bathers.
Supposedly injured some bathers is a perfect bullshit political statement.
Yep.
The likes of which we hear all the time.
Yep.
Which is it's not exactly a lie.
Right.
It nods in the direction of the truth, but it is definitely not the truth.
It's what they call alternative facts nowadays. Yeah.
This is definitely an alternative fact. Supposedly injured some bathers. It's like, I'm pretty sure there's like an arm sitting in it. We have Ben Gardner's head in the morgue if you want to check it out, supposedly.
But as you see, it's a beautiful day. The beaches are open, and the people are having a wonderful time. Amity, as you know, means friendship.
Yeah, great. It's all great.
Yeah.
We're back to the boats. We see two women swimming, splashing around, and there is a shark's fin.
Yeah.
But no music.
Right.
So if you know the clue, you know that this is not the shark.
Right.
And this woman turns towards camera, which we realize is shark POV.
And I love the woman's reaction.
I love the guy who turns and runs, just busting through a bunch of kids, doesn't care about them at all.
And it's the kids who were the first ones who come into the water with the two older people. Perfect. It's just perfect. Both of them have great reactions. And I wonder if he tried out a number of people reacting to it, and then you
I'm sure
the best ones he wanted to use.
Yeah. That's totally what you do.
Yeah.
Is you go like, you basically, I'm sure you've had directors do this. Like, let's do 5.
Yes.
So you do 5 different reactions. Then you grab someone else, you do 5 different reactions. You say, okay, do a big one. Okay, do a subtle one. Do a loud one. Do a quiet one. And you see, and then this is what editors do. Like, what if I put this one first and this one second, or this one second, I'm going to use this reaction, the big one to the small one. That's totally.
Red one. Martin, you got to pull out of the water as
And then the lifeguard blows his whistle.
No whistles!
Everybody, please get out of the water.
And it's a madhouse. It's an utter stampede.
Yeah.
And you see the danger of Larry's decision because you see, people getting trampled to an older guy right there in focus right in front of the frame there who is barely breathing, and they drag him away. An old lady is getting stomped on by people. And so you see the madness of it all as people react to it.
And for me, I don't know about you, but I'm still thinking about splashes of what attracts sharks.
Right.
So this looks super scary to me right now.
Yep.
And then we cut to that fin and just the way that it topples over. And these two kids with snorkels pop up. And they just look up into just a sea of rifles pointing at them. Yeah. And the kid goes,
"He made me do it. He told me to do it."
It's crazy to me because those two kids have the balls of steel to be out there with a shark.
Dude.
You know what I'm saying? In a shark fin, imitating a shark. It's madness.
And all the guys with guns who are looking to shoot a shark.
Right, exactly. That too.
No, this is really dumb shit. I love the idea that you brought up, like, these are the kids of the guy of Charlie and the guy with the pot roast. I love that.
That's totally dumb.
And and now there's a body. Like, the guy looks like he had a heart attack or something happened.
Martin, it's just a hoax. There are 2 kids with a cardboard fin. Is everyone there okay? Did everyone get out of the water all right?
I think it's an interesting element that Spielberg puts him in the boat, and he expresses concern. Is everybody all right? This kind of thing. Like, he becomes an essential part of this crew. He does not have to be out there in the water. He is not contracted to do a job here or anything like that. But the fact that he's out there as his eyes and ears for Brody, I think is a way of giving a little more depth to Hooper without necessarily having him have these extensive conversations about who he is as a person. The fact that he's out there making sure, monitoring the stuff, working with the police guys. And then he's the one reporting back to Brody what's going on. I think it's important to have that in the film.
I think that's a great point because the thing is, I don't think Hooper is as pure as Brody.
No.
I think Brody, in terms of dedication and sense of responsibilities, that's number one. Hooper has these insecurities. He wants some respect. He wants some fame. He wants some success. All those things are true, but he really does care.
Yes.
Yes. He's not going to run out on this situation.
No.
He's going to be there to try to help.
Yep.
And we're like, relief. It's okay. And then you cut to this woman who's like a young artist. I think she is perfectly cast.
Yes.
Perfect costume.
Yeah.
She looks exactly like that mid-70s, kind of somewhat hippie adjacent artist. And we see fins in the distance. This is actually the first view we've ever had of the shark, of anything having to do with the shark.
Right.
These fins.
Full-length view. Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
I mean, this girl has all the Joni Mitchell records that have come out.
Totally. 100%. I also think her performance is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Shark! The shark!
It just feels so real to me,
The loss of breath, because she's saying it out of fear. That's what would really happen. Is a lot of people would be absolutely overwhelmed. And she's looking at the size of the fucking thing. So like as you said, it's our first shot of it, but it's also her first look at an actual shark and the size of this fucking thing.
And what this quote unquote shark is, this is actually just two fins on a float being pulled by a motorboat. It's like there's no shark. This is just literally, it's just the fins. It's like the kids.
Yeah.
And detail, all these details are small, but they're so important, which is Brody's reaction to hearing that is like, what now?
Right.
Because he just dealt with the hoax.
It isn't until Ellen says Michael is in the pond that he gets serious and runs over.
And in case you didn't know it was serious, now we hear the shark thing. And the shot, again, it's a great shot. It's a long lens so that Brody is the only thing in focus, and everyone he's running through as he starts slow and then accelerates is out of focus. So you feel very, very with him.
Yeah.
We see the shark swim by Sean, who's on the beach there.
Yeah.
And Michael and his friends are practicing knots, and there's some guy in a rowboat who's talking to him, seems like a local, although this actually is an actor. This is a stuntman they brought from LA.
Nice.
It's not a local. And he doesn't see the fin coming up behind him.
Hey, you guys okay over there?
And then he gets hit. And for some reason, the kids also get knocked off their boat at the same time, which I don't quite understand, but is totally terrifying.
Yes.
And the guy pops up, and Michael pops up. And then we have the first shot of the shark. And it's this guy from the rowboat is trying to crawl up onto the boat. And then he gets pulled down and you see the shark under the water. I think this moment is terrifying.
This moment and the Quint moment at the end are the two most terrifying moments in the movie for me. Because there is a helplessness you feel as an audience member watching that thing open its jaws, literally, and about to grab this dude's leg. And his screaming is amazing. His screaming is just as good as Chrissy's screaming at the beginning of the
Well, and there's also, it's very, very clear that Michael sees it.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see that guy in the shark mouth. By the way, initially, this is what they shot.
Yeah.
Which is the guy's in the shark's mouth, and the shark is trying to get to Michael so it can eat both this guy and Michael at the same time. And this guy, bitten almost in half by the shark with blood pouring everywhere, uses his last bit of strength to grab Michael and throw Michael out of the way of the shark before he is consumed. And they shot this.
I was just going to say, that's in the movie? And I was like, oh, you're talking about an alternate scene with this. Oh, wow.
That is, they shot it, and Spielberg looked at it and went, it was super bloody. He's like, this is crazy. This is a crazy idea. This is way too much. We can't do it. Plus, you're looking at the shark a lot longer, and the longer you look at the shark, the less real it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So instead, they just did the leg sinking.
Yeah.
With the blood coming up off the severed leg, which is brutal enough.
Yes.
Lots of fights with the ratings boards about how long we showed that leg. And they cut it down as much as possible to get the rating they wanted.
Wow.
There's also, I just love the shot that just flies past Michael as he treads water, stunned.
Yeah. It's an amazing moment to have that. It's such an important moment in the film. And of course, that's what leads us to Jaws 3D later on down the road is this shot. But I also think this is the fact that he shoots 3 beach ladies just laying there as you see this guy getting consumed by the shark in the distance. There's something really smart and powerful about that. That somewhere in the world, no matter how much you're enjoying your life and relaxing and whatever, somewhere in the world, someone is dealing with a horrible ferocity in their life. And so it's just an interesting shot to have that in the movie. Because again, if Spielberg is the greatest filmmaker, as you're positing earlier in this conversation, Steve, nothing is in frame without a reason.
Agreed.
And I think the shot of, and this is all editing as well, but he did shoot these scenes, having those 3 girls just kind of look up as we see the red boat in the distance by the way, or orange boat, using that color is just so smart, that bright color, and having him screaming in the distance. And they're just kind of looking up casually to see what's going on. It just kind of shows you that kind of stuff that can happen when you're just relaxing. There's always something else going on.
And we see that those fins going past the crowd out under the bridge out to sea as Brody jumps over the bridge, heading down to the beach. And I think this is really critical because when Alex Kintner was killed by the shark, nobody really saw the shark. Like, it was happening very quickly.
We just saw pins.
And the beach wasn't crowded. This wasn't the 4th of July.
Right.
Whereas this incident, the whole world sees the shark, and it's super, super visible what's going on here.
Yeah. And there was a shot earlier that we didn't quite stress, but like seeing all those people run past Larry as he's standing there helpless.
Yeah.
Watching that city and the money all go down the drain, and his decisions now, the consequences of his decisions coming to visit him.
They run down to the beach. Ellen is following. They pull Michael up on shore. And I think we talked about this when we did our live show. It's like the shot of him getting pulled up onto the beach and how the last thing you see are his legs. For me, I don't think you had this response, but for me, because I just saw that severed leg fall.
Yeah.
Because you're withholding the legs, I have this worry of, oh my God, is one of Michael's legs going to be missing when they're pulling him up on the beach? Like, it just, all these little details.
Yeah.
But it is really scary.
You know, I love that you have Brody immediately go into action, you know, grabbing the blanket, coming over. Ellen is losing it, of course, and crying, wondering if Michael is dead. And the shot, man, this is the shot, maybe the top 3 shots of the movie is Brody looking up, looking out into the water, and essentially saying to the shark, it's fucking personal now, bitch. And I love that. Like, I love that shot. He doesn't have to say it. He's just staring out there going, now you've attacked one of my own, or you came close to attacking one of my own. Now it's personal. You know, which I think is great.
There's a thing where you go, I'm sure you've had this, where like a weird thing happened. You're like, okay, that happened once.
Yeah.
And then it happens again, whatever it is. And you're like, oh, is this a thing? And then there's the moment where you're like, where you realize like, oh, this thing will not end until I end it.
Yeah, until I deal with it. Yes.
Yeah, I have to deal with it. This isn't going away.
Yeah.
And that's what the moment is to me, is like, this has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
We cut to the hospital, and we hear a little stuff about Michael, who's going to be fine, and we're promising him nice things, when he gets home.
Coffee, apparently.
Yeah.
Want to take him home?
Like to New York?
No, home here.
Yeah. Great moment. I can't help but think both of those moments are connected. Him looking out in the water at the shark, and then cut into this scene here, and at the end of the scene saying to her, no, going home to our place. Because he's essentially saying, like, he is home. It's now home. The fact that he wants to protect these people. He has found a home, and he's found his purpose. And I think that was what was interesting about the first hour of the movie, is he's kind of purposeless, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't know if he fits here, doesn't know if he belongs here. But no, here's a threat. I am now useful, and I want to protect these people. Now I can do what I was built to do, because I've always wanted to be a policeman and protect people. And so I think there's something really powerful in that when he says at this moment, well, you think at this moment would be the moment he would want to leave, but this is the moment where he doubles down and commits to Amity.
Yeah.
Can we take a moment for a moment? Can we take a moment?
Yes.
Lorraine Gray's a hottie. Let me just put that out there, man.
Sure.
She's a hottie. Okay. And so Brody's doing good in life. I just want to make it clear. She's a good mom. She cares about him, cares about the kids, but she's also like, she's got that kind of womanly, sexy energy that I like as a mom. And so it's like, I don't know, I'm saying something creepy probably, but I'm just saying, like, we don't talk enough about how great she is in the movie. Like, people don't when they talk about the movie. And she's the perfect back and forth for him. And her look that she gives him when he says, no home, there's like a smile and a nod that she does. And she looks beautiful in that moment. And then when she walks off, there's something really powerful about her walking off with Sean. Because you sense that there's now something that there's a commitment to what he's going to do now.
So I had never thought about this until you just said it. And I'm sure there was never any intention to have the Ellen Hooper affair in the film. Yeah. I don't think that was really, but thinking about it after you just said that, there is no way that an affair between Lorraine Gray and Richard Dreyfuss in these characters would ever work.
No.
In this movie.
Nope.
The way they drew those characters, that's not who they are.
Right.
And so Ellen leaves, and then Brody turns over, and there across the hospital waiting room is the mayor, looking completely wrecked and destroyed.
Totally wrecked. Disheveled as hell. Yeah.
And Murray Hamilton is so good. Because he's been such a dick through the whole, and watching him just be wrecked, and he's just stumbling over himself. He's mumbling.
I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry.
Got a pen, Larry?
Yeah, a pen, you know. Because you're going to do what you do best. You're going to sign this voucher so I can hire a contractor.
I don't know if I can do that without...
I'm going to hire Quint to kill the shark.
I mean, honestly, when someone in the context of the film has stupidly put other people's lives at risk or made terrible mistakes, this is the comeuppance you want them to have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. 100%. And what I mentioned earlier, right, about moving people off their spot, it is Brody who drags the mayor into this makeshift hospital area and yanks the curtain. And when Larry tries to pull away, it's Brody who yanks him back to the bed to sign that thing to contract Quint. And so you see this is Brody now claiming power in the town. Brody has been pushed around the whole time in this movie until this exact moment. The moment he yanks Larry into this makeshift room, he is in essence taking control of the town from Larry and taking control of the situation from Larry, and will no longer deal with Larry's excuses. You're going to fucking do this.
You know what it is? I like how you said it, because it's a coup.
Yeah.
This is like a coup of Amity, except it's exactly the coup we want, because it's from someone who doesn't want power, has no interest in running the town, has no personal interest. He only wants to do the right thing for this one thing.
I agree. In a film full of flawed men, he is the man to aspire to be, in my opinion. Yeah.
Despite the fact that he is scared of the water, there's all sorts of, Brody's not a perfect man.
No.
But in terms of morals, he's not flawed. He's a truly, truly good man.
Larry, the summer is over. You're the mayor of Shark City. These people think you want the beaches open.
I was acting in the town's best interest.
That's right. You were acting in the town's best interest, and that's why you're going to do the right thing. That's why you're going to sign this, and we're going to pay that guy what he wants.
But this is great performance from Murray Hamilton, right? Because he's in shock. And he is just repeating these things, and because he can't quite process his thoughts fully. He is just saying these things, and they are coming out. The politician is no longer existing in this moment. It is now Larry, the human being, and those things are spilling out of his mouth. And so he's trying to save the situation and think about all this stuff.
This is the thing I see all the time in my son, which is something bad happens, and his whole brain is spinning on what can I say so I won't be in trouble.
Yeah.
As opposed to what can I say to solve the problem.
Right.
And the more my son pushes to not be in trouble, the deeper trouble he ends up being in. As opposed to if he just said, if it's like, oh, you spilled this thing. Oh, I'll clean it up.
Right.
Well, then we're done. Larry is trying to figure out, how will I not be in trouble?
Your son's like, I allegedly spilled this thing.
Dude, you have no idea. And Murray turns up to Brody, and with the most pained, terrified, life-changing vulnerability, I think, says,
Martin, my kids were on that beach too.
Amazing.
Great human moment. Like we've come to hate him. And this is why people like this movie as well. All these characters are multifaceted, right? As opposed to something like Die Hard, where the reporter is just a dick all the way to the end, so he deserves the punch in the mouth, William Atherton, or like he does in Ghostbusters. Here in this movie, and these are the marks of great movies, is that you make the villain or the antagonist, for lack of a better term, multifaceted, so that you give them human moments. Because I think the intrinsic nature of humanity is to want to see the best in people, even though we do harp on the worst in people. We want to see the best in people. So even in this moment, even though Larry's made all these terrible decisions, the fact that Larry has this moment of humanity, we take it in as an audience, and we believe it.
I will say, I will hear no disrespect towards Die Hard. I absolutely love it. But I actually think Jaws is so much deeper than Die Hard.
Oh, yeah.
And I love Die Hard, top to bottom. Every moment I love it.
Totally.
And Larry signs the paper.
Yeah.
He does the right thing in this moment. And then what's so great is what happens as he's signing this paper is that we have pre-lap, which means that we hear audio from the previous scene playing over this scene. And what's interesting about this, first of all, it makes you a little bit off balance because you don't know where that audio is coming from or quite what's going on. And then the other thing is there's a whole bunch of dialogue that happens. And this is, we're going to move into Quint's shack and have that scene that comes from Quint that's totally not important. I will contend that most people do not pay attention to what is said here at all as we're moving into the scene. But we hear
$10,000, $200 a day, whether I catch him or not.
You got it.
Get the mirror off my back so I don't have any more of this zoning crap. You've got that.
And as we hear that, we cut to Quint's shack.
Yes.
John, what do you think of Quint's place?
I think it's amazing. And it's so perfect for this character. And that's why I mean it's amazing. Not that I would ever want to live in a shack like this or work in a shack like this. I think it's amazing for his character. It's amazing, perfectly decorated. The look of it all completely conveys Quint's worldview and feeling. The fact that he has all of these shark mouths lining the walls. And I love that you take the moment to have Brody react to it, right? If you watch carefully, he takes his glasses off and looks at, and he's like in a little bit of shock as he looks around and like, people work in a place like this. And then he puts his glasses back on as Hooper comes in himself and is surveying everything. So I love the look of the place as a character beat for Quint.
How would you contrast Hooper's reaction to the space from Brody's reaction to the space?
Well, I think Hooper's is more of fascination, whereas Brody's is more like judgment. Like, for Jesus, I wouldn't want to be in a place like this. And do people actually live like this? But I think Hooper is more of like blown away by the, how can I say, the working class approach to fishing, right? Because Hooper is of a different class than Quint. So he's going to see it differently. You know?
Totally. And I also think what is Hooper's greatest love in the world is sharks.
Sharks, yes. Seeing all those shark mouths, yeah.
This space is dedicated to sharks. And so I should say, full disclosure, this particular scene is one that I taught in film school over and over and over again because I think there's so much there. And then I was so fascinated by the scene that there's literally a whole chapter in my book on this scene. So I have a lot to say about it. But it's particularly because it does so much to reveal character. And what you just brought up, John, about these reactions is a perfect example, which is that you have a set and just looking at the set tells us all these things about Quint.
Yeah.
Because it says, you know, like, this is not a neat guy. He's probably not married. He doesn't have a lot of money. Like, we can learn all these things.
Yep.
But then it's the contrasting reactions of Brody walking in the space and being concerned and Hooper smiling that tells us all this about Hooper and Brody.
Yeah.
And Quint continues to ramble and he ends up kind of behind this ladder, pours a shot from his still.
Hey, Chief, you try this. Made it myself. Pretty good stuff.
Thanks.
Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
All right. I think this is a critical moment in the scene.
Yeah.
John, why do you think Quint is handing Brody a shot?
Well, it's, and I'm going to say something that I've never thought about or never considered until I watched the movie again. And at this point, I've watched the movie 3 times, all the way
recently.
Through. Yes, recently, because it's such a good movie.
It's really good.
I mean, it's just such a good movie. But I think the perception of Quint has always been that he's this badass and he's a man's man and hard ass and all of this kind of stuff. I think that's horseshit. I think Quint was actually the runt of the people on the USS Indianapolis. I think this is all an act. And I think this is what he has developed within himself to exist and keep distant from people because he's actually a much more sensitive person than you might think. I think witnessing people die in front of him in such horrific ways on the USS Indianapolis, when you watch this film in retrospect, not obviously when you're watching it for the first time, but in retrospect, you can look at this scene and this is all toxic masculine shit that someone puts on to try to test the supposed strength of the people that he's going to be working with. Him handing that shot glass to Brody is an old school hazing fraternity shit. You got to drink this to show how much of a man you are. It puts hair on your chest, right? This is all posturing from Quint. And Hooper, when Hooper comes in, because Quint is actually threatened by Hooper's intelligence, he has to try to undercut his manhood throughout this whole scene. And Hooper is just trying to, in essence, show off because he wants Quint's approval. So that's the balance going on. And Brody doesn't give in to either of the guys. He does his own, he walks his own path because Brody is the middle. Brody is not Quint and not Hooper. He is the middle. And throughout the whole scene, that's what you're going to get with these three guys in their interaction. So I know we think Quint is this badass and whatever, and he is to a degree. He's caught all these sharks. But on the other side, I think it's all done because he's never dealt with the trauma of the Indianapolis, and that has made him an open wound in how he deals with people.
If you watch Quint's face as he watches Brody take the sip, it is exactly what you said. It is 100% a test.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. I mean, Quint is tough on lots of ways, but Quint is a bundle of fucking insecurity that is desperate for status and wants to put everybody on a status meter. And he has to be on top. And so he looks over and he demonstrates what he wants Brody to do because he has his own shot. He shoots it down. Brody, he's watching Brody. Brody takes the most tentative, delicate little sip, and you could see in Quint's face that he now feels he knows exactly who Brody is in that moment. Right. Which, by the way, he doesn't.
No.
He doesn't know the depths of Brody at all.
Yeah.
Other interesting question about this. Why doesn't Quint give a shot to Hooper? 2 people entered his space. He only gave a drink to one of them.
Yeah. Well, because the chief is the guy in charge, and the chief is the man that he has to impress to a degree, and because he's a former military guy. So you give respect to the guy who has rank over you in this situation. Yes, it's his boat, but it's Brody's charter. And so there's a little bit of respect going on. And as you mentioned, I think in the last episode, there may be an unwritten relationship between the two of them, that they've had interactions, and Brody has never hassled him the way the former chief of police probably did.
I believe that was what you said.
Oh,
that was
you
mentioned
said that? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, then, as the other me said, the multimodal me said in episode 2, that I thought that they might have had a relationship in the past where Brody is. So I think this works as well, that he offers hospitality to Brody because he sees Brody as an equal.
And I'll go back to what you said before. I actually think there's more going on because I think that it is Hooper who makes Quint more insecure.
Yes.
I think he's more threatened by Hooper.
Yes.
And I think that what Quint does throughout this scene is to continually try to take Hooper down.
Of course.
In one way or another.
Because his intelligence intimidates him. You know, it's
exactly.
Blue collar versus white collar. Absolutely. Rich.
And it's practical fisherman knowledge versus scientific knowledge.
Yes.
It's educated, not educated. It's all this stuff. And the thing is that my gut is that he knew that Hooper would do the shot. There's no reason to test Hooper, because even like when Brody walks into the space, he feels uncomfortable. When Hooper walks into the space, he's excited to be there.
Yeah, he's fascinated by it.
He's like, this is cool. And the next line, which is very much under Quint's breath, but his next line as he walks away from Brody when Brody doesn't take the shot, is he says, "Can't get a good man under 60," which is a dig at Hooper.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love that Hooper, as soon as Quint's not looking, he's excited by the shot. So he runs up to take the shot.
Don't drink that.
But Hooper immediately drinks that. And in his spluttering coughs, because this moonshine is probably not smooth.
Yeah.
Mr. Quint, you're going to need an extra hand.
And then what we have, and I think this is a great piece of screenwriting, is we have 2 simultaneous introductions, which is that Brody tries to introduce Matt Hooper to Quint.
Yeah.
And Hooper tries to introduce himself. But they introduce different people.
Yeah.
Because Brody says he's from the Oceanographic Institute. That's what he's trying to say.
Right.
Because the thing that makes Hooper most valuable to Brody is that he's a shark expert.
Yep.
But Hooper does not introduce himself as a shark expert. He introduces himself as a sailor. Mm-hmm. He says he's crewed 3 Transpacks in America's Cup trial. The reason I think, I'm curious about your thoughts, is that Hooper, I think deep down knows that his scientific knowledge and education will actually work against him with Quint. So he doesn't want to introduce that part of himself.
Yeah, but I also think, yes, 100%. And I think there are things that we study. And, you know, I said this a few weeks ago on a show with Christian. I said that I study the human condition, and some people have like scoffed at that. While I have actually done that in a lot in my life, reading a lot of self-help books, reading a lot of books about how humans interact in situations. And I think this is what you're seeing is the classic thing of each dude caught up in their masculine traits. Because I think one of the things that people make a mistake about is that, well, if you're nerdy, somehow you're not you don't have the masculine things or the toxic masculine traits. And
you've never hung out with nerds arguing, clearly, if you think that.
That's what I'm saying, right? There is that shit creeps in. And listen, that happens across the board because there are ways that women do this in their own interactions and relationships and the same kind of thing, and where their insecurities rule the way they react to things, right? And so as you put out there with Quint not offering Hooper a shot, that's his way of demeaning him right off the bat and putting him in a submissive position or subservient position in his mind. And then Hooper plays into it by drinking the shot to show how much of a man he is to try to impress Quint, and then talks about, as you said, the sailor stuff as his way of qualifying himself because he knows he doesn't have anywhere near the experience that Quint has. So if he tries to even remotely come close to Quint, Quint is going to scoff at him and laugh at him and whatever. But he's still a very proud man, Hooper. So when Quint tries to put him down, tries to denigrate him, I think it says something positive about Hooper that he pushes back.
Yeah.
And that shows that Quint isn't as strong as we've all been led to believe when he's scratching, chalkboards and talking dismissively about everyone. There is a little bit of weakness and vulnerability to Quint than we might initially believe when you're watching the movie.
Oh, yeah. There are some big cracks there. But let's get to that moment because so Hooper has made the choice like, hey, I'm a sailor. That's what he pitched is like, I can be helpful on the boat. Mm-hmm. The problem is the sailing that he referenced reveals another thing that Quint is not going to like about him because the Transpacs and America's Cup trials are yachting competitions.
Yes, they are.
This is what rich people do.
Mr. Hooper, I'm not talking about pleasure boating or day sailing. I'm talking about working for a living. I'm talking about sharking.
And by the way, the staging here is that Quint is way up on this, higher level and Hooper's down below. This is classic power structure filmmaking.
Yep.
Hooper having to look up, Quint looking down on Hooper.
Yep, 100%.
One more thing I want to point out is he calls him Mr. Hooper.
Yeah.
Mr. Hooper, I am sure, is what he called those shitty second lieutenants on the USS Indianapolis. All those young fucking officers who didn't know what they were doing. This is this way of being respectfully disrespectful again. Yeah. Calling him Mr. Hooper is actually associating with people, officers, and class that he does not like.
Possibly, yeah. And him throwing down the duffel bag as well to kind of test his strength a little bit, I think was another moment of trying to power trip on him. Yeah.
Well, and this is what you were just talking about, is that Hooper came in to be amiable. He smiled when he walked in. He liked the space. He took the shot that Brody didn't want.
Yeah.
He said, I want to help out. I can be a help on the boat. He's done everything he can to be nice. And this guy's been nothing but insulting to him and tosses the duffel bag. So now he's got to stand up for himself.
Yes.
This is that time.
Well, I'm not talking about hooking some poor dogfish or sand shark. I'm talking about finding a great white.
And I love Quint coming down that thing. Just everything Robert Shaw does is amazing. He says,
Porkers? Talking about porkers? Mr. Hooper? Just tie me a sheep shank.
And he gives him a rope.
I haven't had to pass basic seamanship in a long time.
Why is he asking him to tie a sheep shank?
Again, Hooper's pitched himself as a sailor.
Right.
So I think this is a blue collar way of testing his actual knowledge of being a sailor by seeing if is he good? Is he just a sailor because he gives directions, or can he actually be serviceable on the boat? So he's testing him with the sheep shanks. Now, it's one of the most basic knots you can learn.
Yeah.
And the fact, so he's trying to essentially ridicule him if he can't do the sheep shank.
That's what I think too.
Yeah.
I think he's good. It's like going to someone who says like, I want to be I'm a trained cinematographer. They go, okay, can you use a light meter? That's incredibly insulting. Do you know how to turn the camera on?
Yes.
It's incredibly insulting. So, and I love every moment in this scene is just filled with stuff.
You didn't say how short you wanted it. How's that?
And he tosses him the rope. And this is one of the keys to directing and to acting, I would say, which is that everything is a choice. So he's now tied the knot. Mm-hmm. So Quint could look at the knot and go, hey, good knot. He could look at the knot and go, bad knot. Mm. He could look at the knot and scream and do something totally bizarre.
Yeah.
What he chooses to do is not even look at the knot and just toss it away, which I think is just proving that he just made Hooper jump through something for absolutely nothing.
Yeah, just for some power trip. And this shows you the kind of gaps he has in this attempt to be the alpha dog in the room. is that it's all just for show because he doesn't, like you said, doesn't even look at the knot and just tosses the rope aside and immediately grabs his hands to be even more on the nose about how he's trying to physically submit and mentally submit Hooper to his strength.
And look at this cut when he grabs his hands.
Yeah.
It like pulls you in. This is Verna Field's just mastery. I think it crosses the line and you're just suddenly propelled into this moment.
Yeah.
And first of all, we should say that a dude grabbing another dude's hands and holding him, I think holding those hands tightly as he talks very closely is very strange behavior that is happening right now.
Yeah.
And this is another moment, just like at the opening, where Quint's going to say a bunch of stuff. We're really not going to pay attention to it. It's not important.
Dogfish. You got a $5,000 net. You got $2,000 worth of fishing, and along comes.
And he's just talking about fishes, nets, and it doesn't matter because what matters is Hooper's reaction to this guy holding his hands. And you see, so his reaction is like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Looks over at Brody. Do you see what's happening here? And then realizes it's like what we said earlier. It's like, oh, he's going to have to settle in and just endure this.
Yeah.
Because Quint's going to go as long as he's going to go. That's what plays to me on Richard Dreyfuss's face.
Yeah. Yeah. And the shot you have when they're holding hands of Brody in the middle and he takes his glasses off. Because now Brody is like realizing that this is going to be what they're going to all have to deal with him.
I think that shot of the taking off the glasses, if there is any shot in film that has the storytelling in the framing, that one's it.
Yeah.
You understand completely. It's framed to tell you this piece of the story.
Yeah.
And this brings up a question from one of our patrons, which is actually Ian Bradley, who you know because he came on our show to talk about Master and Commander. This is the host of the Patrick O'Brien podcast, The Lover's Hole.
Oh.
Is also one of our patrons.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah. And so he writes, Chief Brody takes off his glasses when he sees the hand on the beach. He also takes off his glasses here.
Yeah.
Dr. Grant, Sam Neill, takes off his glasses when he sees live dinosaurs for the first time in Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Is this a Spielbergian coincidence?
No, I think it's on purpose. 100%. He also missed, Ian did, that he takes off his glasses when he walks into Quint's shack to look at that as well. So those are little moments, the little character beats that convey that you either you can't believe what you're seeing with your glasses. You have to take them off to make sure you see them with your actual eyes. And the second part is that it's also maybe conveying that he is actually seeing the danger of a situation before it happens. Like the dinosaurs, like this moment where Quint is holding Hooper's hands. It's a way of accentuating the danger for the audience because we notice that the protagonist is taking off his glasses. We're going to pay even more attention because the protagonist is now even wanting to be very clear about what they're seeing. You know, so it works on a subconscious and conscious level when it's done well and it isn't overused. You know,
I think it's a great point. And these all of these moments of glasses coming off are just emotionally rich with so much stuff. And we talked about Hooper. We talked about his journey to get here. We've talked about that he's this rich kid. We've talked about that he doesn't want to be known for being the rich kid, that he wants to be known for his competence. He's presented himself as a sailor.
Yep.
I mean, even the way Hooper dresses shows like how he wants to be perceived, you know? And now he is about to have essentially one of his biggest insecurities pointed out because Quint's next line is,
You got city hands, Mr. Hooper. You've been counting money all your life.
All right. Hey, I don't need this. I don't need this working class hero crap.
I love it. It's such a good. And as you said, the way Verna Fields edits this, yanking him into frame, we are in essence either attached to Quint or attached to Hooper the whole time in this back and forth. And then, of course, we have the shot with glasses. But when we go in close up on Quint is digging his thumbnails into the palms of Hooper. And you're right that he is in his insecurities because if you watch him as he's standing behind Brody, he's kind of slightly breathing heavy with his mouth open. It's an embarrassing moment for him.
It is. It is a really weird moment.
Yeah.
And then Brody steps in. And it's so funny because we've just watched the first half of a movie where Brody had to stand up to the mayor.
Yep.
You know, and now here's this other powerful figure and what I love is like everything is about status for Quint.
Yes.
And dominance. And Hooper is very concerned about his status. Yeah. Brody really isn't.
No. Brody, as I said, Brody is the best person in the movie, aside from his wife, obviously, because his focus is saving the town.
Yes.
By killing this shark. It is not because he wants to be in National Geographic. It's not because he's working out some PTSD and trauma, unaddressed trauma from the Indianapolis. It's not because he wants to satisfy the business leaders in the town, even though killing the shark will do that.
Sure.
It's because he is a good man, and there is a danger here that is going to take more lives, and he's willing to risk his fear of water to go out on this boat with a captain who is maybe a little suspect and a guy he trusts but doesn't really know that well out on the water to go tackle this massive killing machine, you know? And so there's so much nobility in what Brody is doing.
Well, and let's get to that moment because he says in that great sheepish sort of Roy Scheider way.
Yeah.
You're not going to do this aboard the ship, are you, Mr. Quint?
Maybe I should go alone.
And there's a long pause. And I just studied Roy Scheider during this pause because I think in this pause, you can see his brain goes, well, if he goes alone, then I don't have to go. And I don't want to go. But then he realized that's wrong, that he can't do that because it was just everything you just said. He has a responsibility. And he says,
it's my party. It's my charter.
And again, Quint has to take a position of dominance.
Yeah.
It's your charter. It's your party. It's my vessel. You're on board my vessel. Mate, master, pilot, and I'm captain.
And in the last moment, he says, regarding Hooper.
Take him for ballast, Chief.
So ballast is the rock and crap and sand and heavy shit you put in the bottom of a boat to keep it stable. It's basically crap.
Right.
And there's a reaction from Hooper. He doesn't like this at all. No. And again, Scheider pauses to think about, he could go, hey, don't disrespect Matt Hooper. He's a valuable person. He could defend him right now.
Right.
He chooses not to. Yeah. He says,
you got him.
And watch Richard Dreyfuss's face at that betrayal, because it is a betrayal.
But it's also, once again, why Brody is great, because Brody understands this is not a fight I need to have. This is not an important fight. There will be other fights. He picks and chooses his battles. And in this particular back and forth, it just makes more sense to appease Quint, because the objective is to get the shark. It is not to get caught in petty, I'm a man, you're a man, who's more manly than I am, and what's right, what's wrong. It's not about that. And the greatest leaders, the greatest politicians don't get involved in petty stuff, see the bigger picture, and will absolutely swallow their pride.
Sorry.
Right?
You just said the greatest politicians to get involved in petty stuff. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah,
we clearly do not have the greatest politicians.
That's why we don't have that many great politicians.
Yeah, Jesus.
But they don't get involved in that kind of stuff because the bigger picture is what matters. And the ones we revere the most are the ones who are able to overcome that kind of stuff and make some eat some crow or make some at times morally or ethically ambiguous decisions because the greater benefit was what's important for more people. And so in this moment, he doesn't have to. He realizes this is not a fight I need to have. Whatever he wants to call Brody, whatever he wants to call Hooper, is totally fine with me because it means he's still on the boat, and that's the objective.
Yeah, I go. It's not that it's totally fine with him.
No,
it's that. I need to get I want Quint and Hooper on this boat.
Yes.
And to kill the shark. That is what I need. That is more important than anything else.
Right.
By the way, all of this stuff between Hooper and Quint very much mirrored the relationship between Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
Dreyfuss, already liked and admired him. He's a young guy. Shaw's much older. Yeah. He was very intimidated by him, and Shaw's seeing that little bit of insecurity felt compelled to cut him down at every possible opportunity. He messed with him through the whole months that they were there.
Burt Lancaster did that to Montgomery Clift on From Here to Eternity as well. They're just certain things, like certain people rub you the wrong way when you're in your full kind of manhood type of thing, and so I think it's a fascinating to see that because also Dreyfuss, let's not try to make Dreyfuss this kind of innocent guy. Plenty of stories about Dreyfuss in the 70s being an utter prick, just like Dustin Hoffman, the small guy disease. And this desire, and look, this is why they achieved the things that they achieved. They knew they were good, but they also knew they were unconventional leading men, but they felt that they deserved to lead films. And so they had to fight through the conventional acceptance of of what a leading man should look like. So they have to fight and claw and scratch. And so that's an overdeveloped sense of doing these things. And I'm not excusing them being assholes to people. I'm just saying I can understand why they defaulted to that at times, because they had a determination to achieve a certain level of success.
I am absolutely pro-respect and anti-asshole.
Sure.
But there's no question in my mind that the shit that went on between Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss made Jaws better.
100%.
So he'd call him like a young punk, or they'd be on the Orca, waiting to get a shot because they were waiting forever. And he would go like, I bet you couldn't dive off the top of the boat. And Dreyfuss is like, sure I could. And then he would do it. Or he said, Robert Shaw walked up to Richard Dreyfuss one day and went, you're fat, soft, and sloppy. You can't even do 10 push-ups. And Dreyfuss goes, I can do 20 push-ups. You can't do 20 good push-ups. He says, tomorrow I'll do 20 good push-ups. And tomorrow he came in and he couldn't do it. And this kept eating at Richard Dreyfuss because he was so intimidated, but he also really worshiped the guy,
Yeah.
Because there's nothing, Robert Shaw's amazing.
But I think what you said is also true about them in real life, as you mentioned earlier. Robert Shaw was the old way of doing things. Richard Dreyfuss was the new school of acting. And so there is a sense of feeling like the new school is going to replace the old school. And so you push back against the new school, you denigrate the new school. And I guarantee you, if Robert Shaw had lived long enough, there might have been an interview where Robert talks about how he was treated as a young actor coming into acting and how the older actors probably rode him like a fucking horse, because there are older actors who are very intimidated by younger actors who are coming in and essentially trying to establish themselves. It happens in every profession. Older people are always intimidated by not always, I guess. There are older people who get intimidated by younger people coming in.
As you said, right when we went into the scene, what Quint brings with him under all that bluster is a huge amount of insecurity.
Yes.
Interestingly, in the book, Quint is just very different. He's basically a tough sailor. Like, he is not this epic figure, this huge personality. He's just a local sailor who's, good at his job and tough.
He's along for the ride.
Yeah. And the main conflict is between Brody and Hooper, not with Quint.
Yeah.
Which leads us to a question from Paul Sevilla from Patreon, who says, in what ways do Brody, Quint, and Hooper represent different archetypes of heroism?
I think it's tough. I don't know that Quint has heroism in the movie. I don't know that maybe Steve can correct me on that, because as I think about it, there are a lot of missteps from Quint's side of things in how he does stuff as we're about to get on the boat and throughout that all the sequences on the boat, all the scenes. Because now once we get on the boat, we're on the boat for the rest of the movie. And the stuff that happens between them, I think Hooper shows heroism in his desire to go in the steel cage, to go underneath, to kind of look at the situation. Obviously Brody with the shooting and killing the shark. But with Quint, I don't know where the moments of heroism are necessarily at. I think more the better question, and not to criticize Paul in any way, is how do these three men represent the archetype of manhood on a boat, in this controlled environment?
I mean, this is the one of the many secret sauces of the movie is these three characters in the second half of the film, and how human and complicated and real and they are, and how much is going on with them. I think so. Here, I do have a thought. I'm not sure how much I 100% believe this, but I think in a weird way, it's like young, middle-aged, and old in terms of a hero's. So Hooper is like the closest to the classic hero's journey.
Right.
He is the young man. He traveled to a distant land. He met different people who taught him different things. He had to literally go through the gates of hell into the scariest possible moments to learn things about himself and return back home. That's classic. That's Hooper. I think Brody is like Hooper had illusions to overcome. Brody is just the straight ahead.
Yeah.
I will do what's right. I have to, that's he's kind of he's the unpowered superhero in a sense. Like both Hooper and Quint have some superpowers because they have a lot of knowledge and ability. Right. Brody has none of that. He is just like, I will go into the lion's den because that's what has to be done to protect people. And Quint is the man who is broken by life.
Yeah.
Quint is this guy walking around with this wound. And the question is, can he overcome it to be a hero?
So many people walk around with a wound that they don't want to address or come to terms with or overcome or deal with therapy-wise because they live under the illusion that the wound is essential for who they are as a human being. And it's important to confront the wound and overcome it. And or not overcome it, I say process it and come to terms with it and make it a friend instead of making it a thing that is constantly dragging you down. And sadly, too many people don't want to do that. And certainly in times past, they certainly didn't want to do that. And I think that's what Quint represents. And I truly believe that if Quint hadn't been killed by the shark, Quint would have probably gone out the way Hemingway did. Just waking up one day, walking out there and taking his own life on the balcony of his ship or the balcony of his home, because he just has that trauma within him that he's never dealt with and will eventually consume him.
I think it never occurred to me until this moment, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is that, I was, ranting about these narratives that live in our brains and how toxic they can be and how powerful they can be and how inescapable they can be.
Yeah.
That's not unlike trauma.
Yeah.
100%. Is that there is a narrative that someone cannot get past. Yeah. Quint cannot get past the USS Indianapolis.
Nope.
He pretends that he can, and he's put all sorts of things on it and all sorts of stuff to make it try to appear like he's not afraid of sharks. But the fact is he is,
Right.
And that haunts him every single day.
I think Hooper is the same way in a different angle. I think he's dealing with the trauma of his upbringing, if I can make my own headcanon, and that his father wanted him to live a different life. He doesn't like this rich life, but he will use the wealth in essence to create a shortcut to status, a shortcut to success. And so it's not an accident that he's almost like the person in the movie that brings 14 suitcases onto the ship. He's in essence doing that with all the stuff that he's bringing. We're going to get a sequence here in just a second of like all the stuff that's being laid out. I don't even know who these people are that are counting all the stuff that he's got laid out. Maybe these are guys that came with him. And then the cage. So he is bringing all this stuff to essentially be a shortcut to his status as a shark hunter or oceanographer or whatever he wants to be eventually classified as. But it's all stuff to help him get to that position quicker than doing the work naturally and working his way up. And there's the different approaches because to him, the quicker he achieves a certain status, the quicker he'll be able to go back at a family function and be like, well, look at me. I've accomplished this now. So you can't talk down to me anymore. And so I think there's a lot of that's behind Hooper's actions. And whereas Brody is the clean one now. His arc is almost complete because he has now achieved the feeling of home in Amity. He's very clear on what he needs to do, and he's going out there to do it. I hear what you said earlier, like he doesn't have necessarily superpowers, but I think he has bravery, and that can go farther sometimes than superpowers.
It just occurred to me that part of status is being with the right group that appreciates you. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
Is that the fact, let's say that Hooper was the number one research assistant for whatever shark project that went on wherever. That doesn't mean shit to his dad.
No.
But the guys who are on the Aurora totally understand Hooper's value.
Yeah.
Quint does not yet understand Hooper's value, although he will at a certain point.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, and so part of it is like not trying to get your status need fulfilled by people that will never, ever understand what you're good at. You know?
Yeah.
That's a key thing. So we're loading up the boat and we see sort of the Quint equipment with the Quint, his first mate who's not actually going to go out with us.
Yeah.
And then we see the Hooper equipment, the scientific stuff. And I'm just going to say right now, I could listen to Robert Shaw ramble anytime. I'm not even, it doesn't even matter what he's saying through the scene. It's awesome.
Jesus H. Christ. When I was a boy, every little squirt wanted to be a harpooner or a sword fisherman.
I sometimes go and watch his interviews on YouTube with like Dick Cavett and other people because he's a fascinating guy. He's such a great voice. But yeah, this whole thing you're seeing this is, what do they call it? This is like blue collar versus white collar, right? Blue collar is what Robert Shaw is representing the salt of the earth, the things I know that works. That's what I have on this ship. That's what I'm bringing on my boat. Well, here's white collar, and that's Richard Dreyfuss, or the more scientific, intelligent approach. And it's all this different equipment that's specialized and been tested, and he bought, and he's bringing this all extra stuff and a shark cage. So there's so much here that he's bringing as a bit of a protection, and also to investigate and chronicle the whole situation as it goes along, which I think is fascinating. So ulterior motives all around, as I said earlier. Yeah.
What you got here? Portable shower or a monkey cage?
Anti-shark cage.
Anti-shark cage. You go inside the cage. Cage goes in the water. You go in the water. Shark's in the water. Our shark.
And then into...
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain.
You could see that Hooper knows, like, I just have to kind of smile and take this, you know?
It's such a great, like, basically just kind of a denigration of him yet again.
There's so much going on because it's obvious it's class structure. It's not jock versus nerd, but it's working man versus nerd and versus science.
Yeah, working man versus science for sure. But I just have this weird narrative in my mind that Quint was never this. Like, this isn't a character he adapted in order to survive in the world. I wonder if Quint came from maybe higher end stock than we know. And he is just, ever since the war, because of PTSD, because of things that he suffered in the Indianapolis, is I kind of have in my head canon that he actually wasn't one of these kind of top sailors who was heroic and jumping into the water and all this kind of stuff and jumping behind the turret. He was actually a guy who was still young and on the ship, and everyone else was stronger than he was at the time. I think he's adapted and created this personality so that because it's so easily shaken by Hooper throughout the movie. And it can't be that strong of a personality if a guy can just show up and shake it simply by being intelligent or being a little persnickety. So I think he sees this thing reflected back at him, and he has to have a battle with it, you know?
I think Quint, for me, is that on the one hand, he is essentially at the top of his profession. This little island, he is the number one shark guy.
Yeah.
And he has the confidence, and he knows, like, this is how you go after a shark. And the Hooper stuff, shark cages and weird equipment and scuba tanks, is like, this is ridiculous. I know how to do it. And I think that confidence is true up to a point. And it is hiding that insecurity of, I don't know what any of this stuff is. You know what else it is? It just occurred to me. Hooper goes into the water on purpose to be near a shark.
Right.
Quint would never do that.
Nope.
Yeah. I think the shark cage is actually a sign of Quint's cowardice. That's how I think he feels that, you know?
I can see some of our listeners getting very upset about this right now, but it's something to consider as we talk about.
And by the way, I think Richard Dreyfuss's reaction of just smiling and nodding is just literally looks to me like this is a crazy man. I'm just going to have to smile at the crazy man. And then we have Ellen and Brody, and she's just being the motherly, like wanting to take care of him.
Did you take your Dramamine?
Yes.
I put an extra pair of glasses in your black socks, and there's the stuff for your nose. The zinc oxide and Blistex is in the kit.
It's very tender.
Yep.
You can tell that she doesn't want him to go. You can tell that she's nervous, but it's almost like she's sending her kid away to camp.
That's exactly how I feel, yeah.
Son of a bitch!
It's got to be Quint.
This collection of
Colorful, isn't it?
35,
scares me.
45-year-old dumps.
Yeah, I love scenes. I mean, you know me. I love scenes where people aren't exactly expressing their emotions, you know?
Yeah.
But it's there. Because what she's really saying is, yes, Quint does scare her, but she's scared for him. She is scared. And then he redirects the fear.
Don't use the fireplace in the den because I
What am I
haven't
going
fixed
to
the
tell the
flue yet.
kids?
His answer is so perfect. And Scheider delivers it with so much to it, so much kind of knowledge of it.
Tell him I'm going fishing.
It's simple and to the point, and it also lets us know that the kids don't know that he hasn't told the kids. They're hiding this from the kids. You know, so if their father is to die on this ship, the kids are going to find out afterwards, not like worrying about it until it happens. You know.
And then, of course, Spielberg is never going to let us just do one thing. He's never going to let us sit somewhere because they embrace, and rather than let us sit in the embrace, Quint just goes off.
Bring it up with you, Chief! Daylight's wasted!
Front bow, back stern. Don't get it right, Squirt. I throw your ass out the little round window on the side.
It's great.
He's just showing off there in this moment. And look, I mean, it's a little bit of a foreshadowing for what he's going to do later when Ellen calls and he picks up the line and immediately dismisses her on the comm. And then later when he takes the baseball bat to the radio as well, it's his way of like cutting this off in essence, you know.
There's a lot of stuff going on with Quint. And I love as Quint gets more maniacal and is just laughing and yelling that Ellen's walk turns into a run.
Here lies the body of Mary Lee. Died at the age of 103. For 15 years, she kept her virginity. Not a bad record for this vicinity.
So that was a tombstone that Robert Shaw saw in Ireland. That's actually written on a tombstone in Ireland.
That's great. But again, he's showing off.
Oh, totally.
He's showing off here. Listen, let me tell you guys something. People who are listening. If you are a badass, if you are a tough as nails person, you don't make a point of making sure people know that you are a tough as nails person.
Yep.
You just are. And so the fact that he's doing all of this stuff is a way of masking his insecurities and his fear about what he's about to confront, about what he's about to do. So he's got to play it like he's the big man on the ship. But the truth is Hooper knows more. Hooper knows a certain amount about the sharks and dealing with sharks. And the chief is there, who he respects and kind of is maybe a little bit like intimidated by. So yeah, I just feel like that's all there. It doesn't mean he's still not hard as nails or he still doesn't mean he's not a tough guy. But all the posturing and the shanties and all of that stuff, that's just meant to show off as opposed to being an authentic thing. You know,
I think, and I've known people like this. I think he at a certain point realized that his crazy behavior gave him all sorts of power.
Yes.
That people didn't argue with him. People stayed away from him. People let him do what he wanted to do because it's just like, that guy's crazy, you know?
He can control his world. Because most people don't want to deal with a crazy person.
No.
You know this. Most people do not want to deal with someone who's unstable or seems unsettling. They want to keep their distance from that person. And so he gets what he wants, so to speak.
And at this moment, I think the movie actually transforms into another movie. This is something that I don't think people really talk about that much, which is that the first half of Jaws is a man versus man story. It's about the mayor and it's about closing the beaches and the business and the economic situation and what's really going on and meeting Hooper. The second half of the movie is man versus shark. And it is completely different from the first half.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is Brody has to grow in the first half of the movie in order to be able to handle what's about to happen in the second half of the movie. It's kind of an odd film in that the arc of the protagonist ends here. Because from this point forward, he is in charge. He is brave. He is handling stuff. And at the end, he kills the shark. But there's no growth for Brody here throughout these scenes in the boat. He's already very clear about his purpose. And so it's an interesting film in that way as well, that he has had his arc before he gets on the boat, which is, this is my home. I now know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to confront my fear of the water because I want to catch this shark and save the people of the town. And so that's what it becomes in the second half of the movie. And I don't think there's an arc at all, either for Hooper or Quint. You might disagree with that. I'd love to hear, but I don't know necessarily if there's any growth other than maybe Quint putting on the life jacket. Maybe that's the moment where the facade of Quint, the character, is dropped and he has genuine fear, which is why he breaks his rule that I'll never put on a life jacket again near the end of the movie. And maybe Hooper, by going in the cage, is his way of confronting his own fears as well, that he's not good enough by going in the cage to confront the shark face to face, so to speak. I don't know.
I hadn't thought about it this way, but I actually think we need two different terms because my tendency, so in terms of the arc, I think you're kind of right, which is that we have a guy who doesn't like the water, who doesn't like boats, who's going to go out on the boat and
he's not happy where he's at in Amity.
Yeah. And so I think that's kind of true, but I don't think I think they all grow and change.
Okay.
But I don't know if I'd say that, but in terms of the classic story arc, I'm afraid to do this and then I do this. Well, that's the arc. But in turn, I think the Hooper and Brody that show up on land are very different from the Hooper and Brody that left.
Oh, by the end.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I think there is change and growth. And this is the call to adventure. This is we're going out to sea. I mean, this is it's funny. And I'll say this probably again later, but people go like, oh, Jaws is a horror film. And I'm like, well, it is a horror film. I mean, there's some of the most horrifying moments in any movie ever. Yeah. Jaws is also one of the greatest adventure films ever made.
Yeah, 100%. That's what makes and I think that's what makes what you said earlier. It kind of underscores that point that these are two different movies.
Yeah.
And although there are horror moments in the adventure, because of course, when the shark comes out of the water as he's doing the chum, and also when the shark bites Quint, those are horror-filled moments.
Totally.
But there's the score takes on a rousing element to it throughout the second half of the movie because you believe that these guys are going to kill the shark and are going to survive. You just believe that these are the guys to do it. And the way it all goes down is not what you expect at all, yet it's so incredibly satisfying.
And as we sail out, we now have the rising adventurous music as we look out through the jaws of Quint's shack towards the Orca, which is the small boat they're going to sail out on. They're sailing out of harbor, and we hear two new leitmotifs from John Williams. And these, to me, I call these the happy sailing themes. These are joyful and fun, and they're kind of played sort of with the flute that you might hear in a sailing vessel. And the first one is...
Stand by fire drill, damage control, report, memo bulletin.
And the second is...
If they don't let you go now, they'll know you're coming in.
And these two themes, that's why I call them the happy sailing theme. They're joyful, they're adventurous. And the thing about a theme like this is you can play them upbeat and happy, which they do here, but you can also play them on different instruments or more dissonant or more darkly, which is how we're going to hear these themes when they come back later on in the movie.
Yeah, or slow them down so that they carry even more weight in showing you that the shark is coming or there's dread about the situation. And then there's another cue once they put the 3 barrels on the shark and they're coming around on a ship, which we'll get to when we get to that moment. But I love how the score changes to match the adventure elements that come into play here in the second half of the movie.
And I feel like as we sail out to sea, it's almost like everything's opening up. Yeah. Like there was something that felt claustrophobic about the first half of the film, even though it's all shot out, lots of outside. It's not shot claustrophobic, but it feels it. And now there's like an opening that happens, you know?
Yeah, because we've been in the first half of the movie, everything's been happening to the people we are growing to care about. Now these people are finally fighting back. And there's just an instinct in human beings to cheer on the people fighting back against the thing that seems overwhelming, a David and Goliath type of thing. And so we naturally gravitate to being more excited and open when films change in that direction. And so I think that's a part of it too.
And now we have to talk about a new element, which is that we've hinted at it before, but this is, as far as I can tell, the first major motion picture that was really shot on the ocean. And this was Spielberg's idea. And it's like what everything else we said. It is an absolute disaster. This was a terrible, terrible choice, except for the fact that it leads to one of the greatest films ever made. And here's the thing about it is that, of course, when you're on the ocean, there are tides, there are waves, there are other boats, there's wind, there's fog, it's cold, it's wet. And the thing that I need to explain, which obviously, John, you've been on many movie sets, but that movie making is a very precise art. And one of the things you have to do is you have to know where everything is. And so there's the job, which is the first AC, and one of their job is to pull focus. So if someone is walking away from the camera, their focus length of the lens has to change as they get farther away. And so, and I'm sure you remember this from being on a set, is what do? You do a rehearsal. The first AC, they get out a tape measure, or the second AC, and they measure precisely the difference from the barrel of the lens to the subject. So so subject starts at 7 foot 3 inches away, and then they walk to 3 foot 4 inches, and then they go over somewhere else that's 9 foot 2, and all those little marks go on the camera, and it has to be exactly precise, and everybody has to hit their mark in exactly the same way, or everything will be out of focus and it won't work. And you think about, those magical shots we've been talking about that Spielberg does, where someone's walking and they wipe to here, and then it becomes a close-up, and then it becomes an over the shoulder, and those are super precise. Yeah. Every actor has to hit its mark. The camera has to be in exactly the same spot. And now we're going to put all of those objects on the water.
Yeah.
And everything on the water moves. And we could be sitting with the barrels, the Orca, the fin, the actors on board the ship, and another boat that has a camera on it. And all of those things are moving all of the time.
Wow.
And so what they do, they get to a spot, and they tie down everything with there'd be 20 anchors trying to keep everything from not moving. And then They're about to shoot. They've rehearsed everything. They've measured out everything. Everything's locked down. And a little tiny sail appears on the horizon. And they go, fuck. Because the whole point, Spielberg is like, there can't be any other ships.
Right.
If there's another ship, they're not alone. It ruins the movie. So now they go, okay, well, we could pull up 20 anchors, rotate everything to new positions, lock down 20 anchors, set up the camera, set up the actors, make sure everything's measured out properly, and then shoot. Or we could wait for maybe an hour and a half for that sail to slowly make it across the horizon. And guess what? Either choice you make, you get all done, the sail is gone, or you've reset, another sail shows up. And you have to wait again. This is what happened over and over and over again as they're trying to shoot.
Jesus. Drive me insane. Insane.
Some days they would only get off a few seconds of film shot in a whole day.
Ah, the magic of movies.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at how much money gets spent on these films because of these kinds of things. But it's all an investment to see if maybe you can make that money back and then some. Like I was reading out in the Ringer, there's a first-person account of the 40-Year-Old Virgin, which I think might be something we would consider.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
That's a great
movie.
movie.
It could be fun when we're looking for a comedy. So, yeah.
Oh, Kelly Clarkson.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a 35-minute read, this article, that is a first-person account of how the film got made. And one of the things they talk about is the millions of feet of film that they were allowed to shoot this comedy on because Judd Apatow wanted to discover the film through improv in a lot of scenes. They wrote a script, but they cast actors to improv. So they would just let the camera roll, and so they had a lot of film to edit once they got into the editing room. And apparently Kodak sent them like bottles of champagne as thank you for buying all the film. So, but it's just, that's the thing. I'm always fascinated about how much film actually gets used. And so you understand why directors and especially executives get supremely upset when things get like so crazy with stuff like this. You know, there's such a cost to it.
Well, we just did this year, we did the season of the Coen brothers. And the Coen brothers, they work out everything in advance. They're sitting with Roger Deakins. They've discussed every shot. And that from everything I understand, they shoot exactly what they plan to shoot. And the movie is very much what they plan to do. And they make great movies. Yeah. And that is not 40-Year-Old Virgin, as you were just describing. That is definitely not Jaws. And those are also great movies. By the way, I think you mentioned that Cassidy, the guy who is Chris, who passes out when Chrissy gets killed, that he entered the film industry. He is one of the dudes on the boats that's redoing the anchors and all that stuff. That's where he is working. So we mentioned Sid Sheinberg, husband of Lorraine Gray, who plays Ellen, and one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, shows up, and he's the head of Universal, and he pulls Spielberg aside and says, "Steven, I'm not sure this film is makeable. What do you want to do?" And this is the pressure that's on Spielberg. I mean, he's going out. He got 3 seconds of film shot in a whole day. Yeah, like they're in deep. The shark doesn't work. They're in deep shit. And he says, "I want to keep going." And he knew he could be fired at any moment. And for whatever reason, this 26-year-old kid's confidence had the most powerful people in Hollywood go, "Okay, keep going." And then he'd go back to that arcade and shoot and play video games all night because he was so stressed out. We dissolve to blood, chum going into the water. By the way, I've done this job. This is not a fun job. And as we said, Spielberg has really tried to withhold red from the film. So seeing this big red stain of blood in the water is very shocking at this moment.
Right.
Of course, Brody is wearing a life jacket. You know,
he's afraid of the water, but he's not going to be unprepared for the water.
No,
so,
absolutely. I've learned that the chair that you fish from is called the fighting chair, and that's where Quint is right now.
The fighting chair?
It is called the fighting chair.
Keep that chum line going, Chief. We got 5 good miles on him.
Who's driving this boat?
Nobody. Tide. One time I caught a 16-footer off Montauk. Had to stick 2 barrels in him, 2 to wear him down and bring him up.
So even though this is a ramble, this is also exposition that's popping out.
I also think this is a fascinating thing because you're watching Brody, who is the chief of police, by the way. He is out here chumming the waters, and you have Quint sitting there in the super relaxed position, having this conversation, you know, "Oh, let me tell you about myself," and blah, blah, blah. And then you have Hooper even behind Quint, who is checking out his scientific stuff and what have you. So both of them have their own kind of things that their ulterior motives that they're doing here. While Brody is essentially almost turned into kind of like the intern on the ship almost. It's fascinating, you know.
And then we have a bit of ridiculous visual comedy that I love, which is Quint opens a beer. Hooper looks down at the styrofoam cup in his hand. Quint chugs the beer, crushes the can, and then Hooper, in a powerful act of masculinity, chugs his coffee and crushes the styrofoam cup.
It's great stuff.
It really is.
By the way, did you notice that Brody is putting Old Spice into the handkerchief? I think that's such perfect.
It's great.
Of course, it's Old Spice.
Of course. And then Martin goes over to touch a knot, and he grabs the wrong rope, and the cage falls down, and his hand reaches up and stops the air tanks from rolling, which, of course, is another plant.
Damn it, Martin! This is compressed air.
Well, what the hell kind of a knot was that?
You pulled the wrong one. You screw around with these tanks and they're going to blow up.
This is not true.
Is this a plant? Feels like a plant.
There's a full plant. It's a perfect plant. I mean, I suppose there might be a way to blow up a tank of compressed air, but they're not unstable.
Yeah, that's real fine, expensive gear you brought out here, Mr. Hooper. But I don't know what that bastard shark's gonna do with it. Might eat it, I suppose. Seen one eat a rocking chair one time.
Again, a plant.
But I like that after he says that to Hooper, he leans over. And this is a really interesting moment. I don't think people got stressed this moment, but I don't think Spielberg leaves this moment in the movie on accident. When he leans over and says to Brody,
Hey, Chiefy, next time you just ask me which line to pull, right?
it's his way of letting his guard down a little bit and showing a little bit of care for Brody because he doesn't want Brody to embarrass himself. And so I think this, and he says it in a way that isn't like, listen here, you idiot. Next time you pull something, ask me first. I'm the captain. He's saying it more like as a counsel, you know, almost like he's teaching him. And so I kind of like that they have this little energy of Quint that makes him a likable person. And also, in my opinion, proves that he is a guy who has put on this character in order to survive. But he's actually, like most people put on characters like this, he's actually a pretty sensitive guy. And so he lets these moments, he lets his wall down in these moments, and they make him a much more interesting character in the film.
So I'm so glad you brought this up because, you know, I interpret this moment completely differently from you. And yours is totally valid. Everything you say, I mean, there's so little clues, and we're drilling down into the most minute line and not the most important line of the film. But this is like, welcome to the Cine-Files. This is why we're going to spend 4 parts on Jaws, because I think this is fascinating. I actually see this in a really different way. I think this is that weird sort of kind of respectful disrespect I was talking about before. First of all, he calls him Chiefy. The way he's treating him is, to me, is kind of like a child. He's saying, you don't know anything about boats. You don't worry your little head. If you have a question, you just come and ask me first. That's how it feels to me. You know?
It's interesting. Yeah, I see it completely differently. I think he's trying to take care of the chief, and so he doesn't want him to embarrass himself. And I see Chiefy
that's
as,
definitely what he wants Brody to think he is saying. But I don't actually think that is what he's saying. But your interpretation makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, because when he says Chiefy, to me, I look at Chiefy as affectionate.
Sure.
Like sweetie, baby.
Absolutely.
Honey, you know, that kind of thing. And so, and the fact that he leans in physically with his body, I think it's a form of affection to a degree. But you might be right. You know, certainly there is a way to look at it where he, because of the hard, brusque nature that he is giving off, that he is much more condescending, because he said to him earlier when they were figuring out this boat ride, you know, it's my ship. I'm the captain.
Right.
He makes it very clear. So, yeah.
There's just what's so great, and we established it in the earlier scene, and now we're kind of driving these a little more. There's so much tension, competition, masculinity, grumpiness, posturing, all sorts of shit that's going on with these three guys.
Dudes being dudes.
Yeah. And we've got so much. If you want to know how to get your exposition out and do plans and payoffs, in this scene, we've covered chum, barrels, Hooper's equipment, the shark cage, air tanks, and tying knots.
And the competitive nature between Hooper and Quint.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of knots, that's what we dissolve to. We dissolve to Brody practicing his knot. He says,
Little brown eel comes out of the cave, swims into the hole, comes out of the hole, goes back into the cave again.
And he pulls on the rope, and it's the wrong one.
It's not too good, is it, Chief?
Did you ever have to do like not learning knots?
Of course, in the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Hated it. Never used it, never bothered with it, but I got the badge eventually.
I there are a couple that I'm good at, but as a dyslexic boy, the left-right thing made it really like this, that all those cave ones and in and out of the hole, and it's hard.
I do think it's interesting that Hooper is like looking at the camera like he's never used it before, watching him. And so it's a little bit of a window into him also learning how to do this stuff. He kind of mirrors what Brody is doing because Brody himself is still trying to figure out how to do this knot. And here is Hooper trying to figure out how to work this camera. So it's kind of juxtaposition there that's going on. It's really interesting.
And then Quint is sitting in that fighting chair. We're in low angle looking at him, and that reel just clicks.
That's great. It's so great.
As small can be. And this answers a question I'm going to ask later, but there's music.
Yeah.
And Quint looks, I love that nobody else has noticed yet.
Yep.
And the line is going into the water, and we watch the line shake and see the water vibrate. And this to me is like the precursor of the water glass in Jurassic Park. You know?
Yeah, great point. Yeah.
All the shots are perfect. Quint kind of sitting up. We see Hooper sitting up at the helm behind him. Quint very quietly, hasn't said anything, straps himself in. Brody is still just working on that knot. The tension is building. Quint very delicately pulls up the rod. You can feel that he doesn't want to disturb the shark if the shark is on the line. And he places in that cup, which is like, on a gimbal on the chair, and he straps himself to the rod, and his feet push down on the board, and every one of those shots is building the tension.
Notice how Mr. Talkie Talks ain't saying shit through this whole moment.
Yep.
It's because it's time to get serious.
Yeah. And again, this is perfect. Spielberg constructs this perfectly. The tension is super high, are focused entirely on what the hell is on that line, and that is when Brody finally successfully ties the knot.
Hey! I got it!
The tension build is perfect, and now it's thrilling. It's exciting.
Hoover! Reverse her! Taking a hell of a lot of line! Chief, get the scoop out the bucket! Whip the reel!
So we're about to get to a moment where Quint's performance is incredible power. But the other thing I didn't mention about shooting on the ocean, people get seasick.
Yeah.
And every single person on this cast or crew had one day where they were laid out. And this was Robert Shaw's day. It was the waves were rough. They described him as so seasick that people couldn't touch him. If they touched him, it would make him sick. And they literally, to do this shot, they carried him onto the boat and placed him in this chair. And he can barely move. He can't speak. He just sounds like completely fucking wrecked. And Richard Dreyfuss says, there's no way, this is ridiculous. I mean, the man's unwell. There's no way he can do this scene.
Yeah.
And Spielberg says, action. And Quint turns to Hooper with more intensity or energy than Dreyfuss had ever seen and says,
Hooper, you idiot! Starboard, ain't you watching it?
Spielberg says, cut. Shaw completely collapses, and that is the end of shooting for the day. He got that one line out, and Dreyfuss claims he's never seen more power come off a human, as it felt like it threw him through the wall at this moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, like we talked about, there was already a built-in animosity between these guys in real life. And he's probably super irritated that he has to be on set and shoot this scene. And so he probably just unleashed all of it at Dreyfuss in that moment. And that mixture of reality and fiction worked so well.
I love Quint talking to the shark. It so reminds me of Old Man in the Sea, which is one of my favorite books.
He's gone under. He's gone under the boat. I think he's gone under the boat. Yeah, it's too easy. He's a smart, big fish. He's gone under the boat. Keep it steady now. I got something very big.
And then this interesting thing is happening, which is that Quint is totally focused on what he believes is the shark.
Yes.
And Hooper starts to shake his head.
I don't think so.
You put your gloves on, both of you!
Hey, Quinn, let it go.
Hey, Hooper. Maybe a big yahoo in the lab, but out here, just supercargo. If you don't want to backstroke home, you get down here.
All right, you don't want to listen to me, don't listen to me. It's not a shark.
It's a fascinating moment that all of a sudden Hooper, who has no experience really at this kind of level of doing this, is telling him to let it go. There's a swagger to it, right? And he's almost maybe calling Quint out a little bit and trying to undercut him a little bit. And maybe he thinks Quint is making more out of this than is actually there in order to try to impress Brody or whoever. Because there's such a swagger to him and the confidence to what he thinks is going on here, which he thinks it's not the shark. So it's an interesting moment.
So I've been around people that are really good at some of this nature stuff, and they know weird shit, you know?
Yeah.
Like they'll see, you know, and I've taught, you know, someone who's fishing and they're like, oh, we're going to see this fish around this corner because they saw something in the biosphere that made them go, oh, this is going to, you know, like things like that. And so I don't know that there isn't something that Hooper could know about shark behavior that would tell him that a shark wouldn't do blank, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also just had the moment where Quint crushed the can and he crushed the cup because he desperately wants this guy's respect. He's right. And so he's trying to, so who knows? And we never actually find out what was on this line, you know?
No.
Suddenly the line cuts and both Hooper and Brody go flying.
Even fish, eh? Marlin, stingray, get through this piano wire. Don't you tell me my business again. You get back on the bridge.
That doesn't prove a damn thing.
Well, it proves one thing, Mr. Hooper. Proves that you wealthy college boys don't have the education enough to admit when you're wrong.
Do you have any feeling about whether there was a shark or not a shark?
I think it was a shark. I think it was it, and it just bit through the line eventually. And I do find it to be a fascinating moment because of what it leads to, which is Quint saying what he says to Hooper, which is the kind of the mantra that Quint is on over this entire trip. Until they share and connect over the injuries, he has a disdain for Hooper. And so that moment is Hooper's essentially set himself up for this moment for Quint to be able to say it proves one thing: you college boys don't know everything you think you do. And, you know, we're at a time now where there's very strong divisions between people who are like, these people who are these intellectual elite and all of that. And so it's essentially like taking that narrative and putting it in this movie, even though this movie is back in the 1970s. And certainly we've always had that kind of thing. So I like that it's an element here, this idea of blue collar versus white collar, educated versus street smart, you know, and it's a good energy to have on the ship.
I don't think there's any evidence either way to tell me what was on that line.
Sure.
Except the only evidence I have is that music played.
Yeah.
Is that when there was a cardboard fin, there was no music.
Yeah.
And here there was music. So that's the only clue. But really it's ambiguous. Really, we don't get to know what happened and if Hooper is right or Quint is right or whatever, but we do advance their conflict.
Why do we have this moment though, do you think? Yes, it advances the conflict, as you just said really well, but do you think this is also to add to the feeling of how dangerous this creature actually is and how smart this creature might actually be, and how overwhelming it might be?
I think it does do those things, but I actually think the bigger thing that it's doing is it's building anticipation that's going to make the next moment when we actually see the shark even bigger, which is that this is a whole scene of not seeing the shark again, you know? And so we really, and the tension built really high up to a point, and then he didn't give it to us. So that's what I think. By the way, you were talking about the conflict. The conflict in the book is, of course, not between Quint and Hooper. It's between Hooper and Brody. And there's a moment around this point in the book where Brody is so angry at Hooper because he suspects him of sleeping with his wife that he reaches down to his holster to pull a gun and shoot and kill him on the Orca, except for the fact that he had left his gun in a bag in the cabin. And so he didn't have it on him. But he's convinced that if he'd had his gun on him, he would have killed him. Yeah, it's totally different stuff going on.
Yeah.
I love, by the way, that once Quint turns his back on Hooper, he does the whole elbow flip off, makes faces at him.
Mr. Intelligence, reverting back to being a 5-year-old.
Totally. And Quint just like banging on the ceiling and goes,
Go back! Full throttle! Won't have to take this abuse much longer.
Which I don't know if that's a W.C. Fields or Walter Matthau or something like that he's doing.
Yeah.
It's later. We're at a low angle looking up at the crow's nest where Quint is, and then we go to the reverse shot, which is the high angle looking down past Quint towards Brody. Hooper's playing solitaire. This is the waiting time.
Brody! Stop that chum line again, will you?
Let Hooper take a turn.
Hooper drives the boat, Chief.
Like the grumpiness of Brody, who's going to do what he has to do. But that doesn't mean he's not going to bitch when he has to be the guy who's constantly slogging the fucking fish guts all day.
Yeah. It almost becomes what you had mentioned earlier, right? With your impression of Quint and how he's treating Brody like he's a child. It's essentially a father who's taken his two sons out on a fishing trip. And his two sons are different. So he treats them different, right? And I think it's not an accident that this scene begins with Quint almost in silhouette. We can't really see his face initially, lording over the ship, almost like he's the father of the ship. And so you have that element. So he's dictating terms as he's looking down at both of them, right? And one of them is like, he reverts back to being a teenager. Why doesn't he do the chum? Why do I have to do the chum all the time, right? And then his father has to correct him, Brody, Hooper drives the ship, and Hooper's out here playing solitaire, for God's sake. So
Stop playing with yourself, Hooper. Slow ahead, if you please.
You heard him. Slow ahead.
Yeah, see, they're teenagers.
Yeah. I love that he's just a little bit pissy there. I love it. So we have discussed throughout these many, many podcasts, John, that the shark is not working. The shark has continued to not work. And I want to talk a little bit about that because what we don't see, of course, is it's not just that the shark didn't work. It's that they were shooting and they thought it was going to work. And they said action and the shark failed. And they said action and the shark failed. And it failed in different ways every time. It would go the wrong way. It wouldn't rise up at all. It wouldn't move. It wouldn't do the thing we're asking. And so you as an actor are sitting here acting a scene, hoping to God you can get to the end and the shark will work. And I'll tell you the story that this reminded me of, which is years ago we did Some Like It Hot.
Yes.
And Marilyn Monroe was not in the best shape, frankly, when they were filming Some Like It Hot. She was undependable. She was sometimes intoxicated. She showed up late. She didn't know her lines. And so Billy Wilder approached Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon and said, listen, you guys have to be good on every single take. Because the one take where Marilyn is good, that's the take that's going in the movie.
Right.
That's what's happening here. Roy Scheider, all these guys are having to do their job over and over and over again, dozens and dozens of times, hoping that the shark will work.
Yep.
And most of the time it doesn't. Can you imagine how that would affect your acting? How you would still be able to give a good performance?
I think, but it keeps you on edge, right? It keeps you sharp. So, because sometimes you're going to take them, it's natural. It's people forget, like acting is a job. It's a job. You clock in to do the job. And yes, some actors, it's the most amazing, flowery. He really explored the struggle of man and all of that. But it is a job, and so when you're on the set, and especially after all these, as you said, Steve, all these days of shoots and setting up to shoot for the entire day and only getting 5-10 seconds of footage, it can get to you. So the fact that the shark doesn't work is another way of keeping the actors disciplined and keeping them on edge and keeping them on point. So that they know, like, because the quicker we get these shots, the quicker this shoot is over and the quicker I can go home. So I'm going to bring it every time I get a chance to act because I want them to use this take so we can get closer to getting the hell out of here. So yeah, it's not the optimal way to do things, but it sure did lead to a hell of a movie. So.
Absolutely. So the crew at this time is calling the production flaws. Spielberg refers to the people working on the shark as the special defects department. Things are not, it's like, I think Spielberg's a really good leader, but it's not like things are happy. This is not, this is a really stressful place to be. And that's where we are at this moment where supposedly we're going to see the shark, which is what happens because Brody is, as he was before, slinging blood and chum into the ocean and muttering to himself. And he says,
slow ahead. I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
The shark rises out of the blood and Brody pops up, crossing the line in one of the most iconic moments in film history.
Dude, that shot of him shooting up is amazing. Just shooting up into frame.
Yep.
I don't know that I've ever seen a shot that quick. And I wonder if editing, they like sped it up so that it's even more of an almost not human type of reaction. That's the kind of fear that it elicits, that you do things that you wouldn't normally do at a speed that you would never normally move. But he is utterly petrified in that reaction, because it's so close. The shark was so close to his arm.
Well, I'll tell you something. I don't know if they sped it up, but I'll tell you something that I think intuitively is affecting how you're perceiving that speed, which is that they're crossing the line. And what that means is when he starts moving on the A side of the cut, is that he's moving, I don't remember if he's moving right to left or left to right, but he's moving one way. And then when he pops in a frame, his body's moving the opposite direction. And so that creates the sense of greater movement than you would have had if you didn't cross the line. Because when you don't cross the line, the movement feels continuous. Whereas now it's almost like he does like a much bigger movement because we've crossed the line.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And now he backs up slowly into, almost magically, I feel like, into the cabin where Quint is, and says, in arguably the most famous line of the film,
"You're going to need a bigger boat."
Now, that is an improvised line. What people, by the way, think is that he just made this up at this moment. No, they rehearsed it, and he came up with the line in the rehearsal process, and Spielberg went, "Oh, that's great. We should have you back up," and came up with the structure of the whole thing.
That's perfect. And the camera, again, we should highlight, is perfectly placed. Quint in the foreground, but slightly out of focus to our right. And then Brody comes into frame as he's backing up into the middle and just past Quint, and says the line. I love that the cigarette has never left his mouth and is almost dried there. It's almost glued to his mouth. It's so dry. And he says it matter-of-factly. Like there's no question about it now. And he now sees what this is all about, like fully face-to-face, eye-to-eye. It's a great moment. And it snaps us back into the reality of the movie. Because we were enjoying the back and forth and the ball busting and all of this and the friendly competition with a beer and the styrofoam cup. But this is now the reality that's come to visit them. It's great.
And I hate to say this, and I'm sure that everyone listening is going to hate to hear it, but at this moment where we have seen the shark and we are about to begin the battle, it's time to end. I'm sorry, part 3 of our exploration of Jaws. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You could visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for the Cine-Files. You can subscribe to the show at all the usual places, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Please leave your reviews if you haven't already. Leave comments anywhere you can. We always like to read them. If you want to buy or stream Jaws along with every other film we've ever reviewed, it's on Cine-Files.net. And you can support the show through Patreon or Apple Podcasts, where you can get ad-free versions of the show and listen to our Cine-Files shorts. I think we're about to record one possibly on the topic of editing, which you can tune into. And you could follow me at SR Morris on Twitter and SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how about you?
You can always follow me at The Rocha Says, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads and Blue Sky. And of course, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Rocha Says. We got all kinds of content on there, like the Geek Buddies, the Geek Buddies, the Hot Mic, Jedi Way, Spill the Tequila, and all the stuff that I do there, like The Truth, the new show that we're doing. So there's a lot of stuff there. So come hang out with us. As I said, and of course, Steve, this is essentially our first film where we going into a 4th part, and like a lot of you said, we're going to need a bigger pod. Well, you were right. We did need a bigger pod.
And I think that's it for this time. We'll be back next time, I believe, to conclude our exploration of Jaws right here on the Cine-Files.